All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind. But we're going to have a show.
We are late. I do not like being late, as you know. I know they make fun. They have a big fun thing about the show starts late all the time. I don't like it, and I want it to stop.
Why are you yelling?
But alas, we have run behind with their last-minute things that we've had to attend to here in Mark Thompson Show land. It is a pleasure to have everybody here. It is a pleasure to be here. I must tell you that I've been to the mountains and the valleys. I've been to the East Coast and the West Coast. I've been to red country. I've been to blue country. And I have a window on what's going on in this nation. And I will share it with you today. It's not all good, I'll be honest with you. But it's not all bad. I'll be honest with you that way too. It is honesty, which is my middle name. Thank you very much, everyone. And I know, well, you know what? How dare you? How dare you play the Oprah what when I'm proclaiming my greatness as an honest broker, Albert? My God, sir. Really?
Albert, thank you.
Kim is here, everyone. That's exciting. And I must tell you that
Kim, how are you?
Kim has taken on so many responsibilities on this show. When it comes to getting us information, getting us video, tracking down last minute certain developments on this show, Kim has risen to the occasion. And
yet, it's still not good enough.
No, it's not. It's not. No. Thank you. That's exactly right. I mean,
they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
My point to you, Kim.
This is no picnic, no summer camp.
Exactly. It's not summer camp, Kim. You know, I get it. You do some work. You rescue your son from the threatening waters of the Pacific.
Again.
You come back and you expect everybody to have a parade for you. That's just not the way it works, okay? Yes, thank you. We'll give you a little recorded applause. That's about the best we can do. I have a very good show, a couple of super important stories, of course, that we would like to review. I also, by the way, just while I'm thinking of it, want to thank Michael Shore, who is tremendous as a fill-in in the captain's chair, and both you, Kim, and Michael did really well, and Albert, the way you made it all work. You know, you need, especially when somebody is only here occasionally, you need somebody who can help guide that person through, and you guys both did really well, so thank you. What I was going to say is we have a guest on our show that maybe those who are regular viewers will remember. He's coming up at the bottom of the hour. He is the former ambassador to the Vatican.
Yeah.
And
the Holy See.
The Holy See. And the Holy See, you know, it's called Holy See. Does anybody know why what Holy See means? It's obviously, yeah, it's, so, it means, of course, we all know what it means. It means, you know, the seat of power, but its see comes from a Latin word, I think. And so see means seat. So it's really the holy seat of the Vatican. It's where the Pope sits, or some version of that. But anyway, so he was the ambassador to the Holy See. Francis Rooney is his name, but he was also in Congress. He was a congressman for some time. So he brings an institutional knowledge of Washington to the conversation. But when we spoke to him last, it was still the Biden administration. Now I want to speak to this guy who is, you might consider him an old school GOP. I want to speak to him, especially because he's a diplomat, about what's going on now. And of course, with the passing of the Pope, I would like to talk to him about that and American policy. It's not just all about the Pope. It's about the fact that the Pope and the Catholic Church under the Pope, who just passed away, Pope Francis, embraced a bunch of policies that were policies of inclusion. Also, policies that were hyper aware of the planet and the environment and our responsibility to preserve this place. And yet, of course, the American administration and American politics don't reflect any of that now. It's an exclusionary view of the world and the view of America. It's a completely reckless view, in my judgment, of the planet and of climate They've dry cleaned, once again, government websites from any reference to climate. They have dismantled NOAA, and they're doing the same thing with the National Weather Service. These are kind of obvious chip shot elements when you talk about what's happening with the environment and climate. So anyway, I wanted to get his reaction to all of this. And as I said, because he's a diplomat, I'll be interested to see how much he kind of like tiptoes around, insulting this guy, Donald Trump, who is head of his party now. So
we have David Katz today, too.
David Katz in the second hour, and that's particularly relevant most days with this administration, but today, because just in the last hour, a major court decision has been passed down, and it involves the use of the Alien Enemies Act, which Trump, as you know, under that flag, pursuing to deport so many people who are in this country. So a new judgment, just handed down, is going to block the White House from doing that any further. I want to get David Katz's take on this and what might happen. So all of that to come. Peter Newton writes under a $10 super chat, and thank you. Mark, what is the general vibe back home in D.C.? If attendance at the Defenders games is representative, I would say it's very dour. Yeah, there is a thank you for that, by the way, the super chat. I would just say this: in Washington, it's I think there's a sense of anxiety. What's going to happen? What is this administration capable of? How to staunch the bleeding that's already happened, and where to go from here. Also, because it's Washington, it's very party politics specific. How to reconstitute the Democratic Party in some way that makes it more appealing to the voters. This is an interesting conversation to have, because you're having it alongside the fact that Republican approval ratings for this president are dropping like a stone. So you'd think, and there is a body of, there's a philosophy, a body of thought, and I would say I might fall into this category, which it says you should be able to showcase those things that voters care about, that this administration is totally screwing up, and you should hammer that and hammer it and hammer it. And that should buoy your party. Now, I understand the Democrats are scrambling for message, for leadership, etc. But the one thing you can't do is, meantime, point out what's happening with this party, the party in power. Because the party in power is hurting a lot of American voters. So while Democrats are scrambling and bumming out about their approval rating with voters being so very low, and it is, and it's worth bumming out about. But while you're doing that, you should be calling out this party. Sadly, we only have two parties in this country, only two viable parties. And the Democrats, I believe, should be doing the finger pointing right now at what's happening. You're out of power, so point the finger at the horror show that is government at the moment.
How do you know what to hit the hardest? While you were gone, we played a piece of video from Bernie Sanders, who was responding to criticism from some other congressperson who said, why do they use the word oligarchy? Why are they using this word that Americans don't understand? That you should call it a king. You should say this. Meanwhile, we know in the last election that it was the economy that played a big role. So is it Democrats that just care about the Constitution, or the possible authoritarianism rising? Should we just hit on the fact that the economy's tanking? What's the best message to get out to the most of the American people that make a difference?
Yeah, I love that you point this out, because that's exactly what was going on in Washington when I was there. They're asking those same questions. What do we concentrate on? I think, again, this is just my thought. I'm one of the smartest people in the.
Do you know who I am?
I'm kind of a big when I say it's just my opinion, it's super important. Okay, so
it's like the opinion of 5 or 10 people as opposed to one man.
Yeah, 5 or 10 really smart people. Okay, but what I would say is that
you and John Rothman, you guys can stand alone together in the corner of the room and pontificate.
Lord. Mark, I've been thinking very deeply, and I'd like to underscore this for your audience. There are only a few things that they should be pointing to. So I wouldn't pay attention to two things that that comment provokes. One is, I'll just work from the back end and forward. I think the Constitution stuff, this is a violation of the Constitution. While true, I think that gets into kind of esoteric territory. Most of us aren't super familiar with the Constitution. Most Americans, like, I don't know, I get it. The Democrats are always going to say that it's unconstitutional. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of, fill in the blank, immigrants.
I can't imagine anything more important.
Right. No, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I mean, again, these are the very pillars on which this democratic republic is built. So you're right. I think you're right to identify it that way. But what I would say on the Bernie Sanders thing and the use of the word oligarchy and just generally, guys, they got 38,000 people showing up at those rallies. Thank you very much, Albert. I mean, you're telling me no one understands what oligarchy is? Well, tens of thousands of people have turned out, and it's called the Fight Oligarchy Tour. So somebody knows what it means. And I think, I get that you have to dumb down a message and you have to refine a message, but I don't hate the use of the word oligarchy. I'd like to see billionaires, but they talk about billionaires, but use the phrases like billionaires, what we say, billionaire boys club, cabinet, the pounding of billionaires controlling the American government and using it to further enrich themselves. That is a great message. And if it's the oligarchy tour, and there's Musk, you saw there at the end, and Musk, for all of this stuff about him taking a hit on Tesla, and he is taking a hit on Tesla right now, he's wildly enriched himself at the beginning of this entire process. When he came in as the leader of Doge, he took care of the Elon Musk interests in a big, big way. In fact, that dictated the agenda as to what government agencies got dismantled first. It was those that had issues with Elon Musk, as you're aware. He started at USAID and went to EPA. These are all ongoing investigations that were going on at those agencies, or fines that had already been imposed in the case of EPA. But what he did is he made them all go away by using the chainsaw of Doge.
More than $2 billion in liabilities, reporters counted about how much money he saved by going after all of these agencies that had targeted him or were investigating him, and it's more than $2 billion.
So there's a self-enrichment agenda to this administration and to those who are, quote, helping out America, like Elon Musk. But I have to say, the ability to message that is a challenge. And so you have to hit it over and over and over again. And as you know, this is for your window. Be still my soul, says Harry Magnan. Thank you for the super chat, Harry. And a shout out to you in Florida, right? That's where Harry is, I believe.
I don't know.
Isn't that right or no? Am I wrong?
I'm not sure.
No, maybe. Anyway. But now I've lost my thought, Albert, and I don't know who to blame. So I'm...
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
All is well if I receive the rod of equity and mercy. Compare the oligarchy crowds in Macomb County, Michigan, with Trump's self-aggrandizing Meta in the same red county. Oh, that's interesting. Thanks, Harry. That's also from Harry Magnan with a $5 super chat. Thank you. Super chats are live, and super chats, of course, and super stickers are really very much appreciated. And we're in the middle of kind of a fund drive that we're going to try to do. Got to raise some money for the show. Eugenio de Arnal, hey, a $5 super sticker. Big shout out to you, and thank you.
Big shout out,
Eugenio. But I don't know. He just did his 100-day tour. Is that what Harry's talking about? And he didn't get a big crowd for that?
No, well, he did one of these rallies in Michigan, and I didn't notice that it was not well attended. It seemed to be pretty full.
I don't know. I saw. In fact, I thought I included some video, and we've got some video to share with you. I did want to give you some breaking news, which is there's been a couple of pieces of breaking news this morning.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The first piece of breaking news I'd mentioned already is that a judge has stopped the deportations that have been going on under the flag, if you will, of this Alien Enemies Act. The Alien Enemies Act, from the 1700s, is something that Trump invoked to expedite and essentially permit his power as president to get rid of people from this country. Now, even if you use that, those people are still entitled to due process, which was flushed, as you're aware. We've talked about it. We can talk about it more with David Katz. But that all is stopping if they honor this court order. The second thing that happened is that the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, the guy who put together the Signal chat and included the editor of The Atlantic on the Signal chat as the Signal chat, again, unsecured way to communicate, apparently a favorite way to communicate. And you'll remember, Kim, I said, oh, they must use this all the time. They must do this all the time on Signal chat. It's just that we're now finding out about it because they screwed up and they included the editor from The Atlantic. But otherwise, this is going on. These unsecured communications are de rigueur. It's just what they do every day.
Well, and then we found out that Hegseth tried to have it, or did have it, installed on his computer at the Pentagon on what they call a dirty line, which is not a secure line. So yeah, if he wanted it installed, he's using it for other stuff.
Right, exactly. So, this is a sloppy crew and a reckless crew, and I'd say that is one of the ways in which we see the sloppiness come out. But anyway, the guy who pays the price, at least in the short term, is not Pete Hegseth. It's Mike Waltz. So,
hi, Mike.
Yeah, he was a party line boy.
Sayonara,
now he's gonna, he'll have the farewell party sooner than. There he is, checking if there's a new Signal chat. He's checking his phone. They do a lot of talking on the unsecured line.
It's a goodbye chat. That's a group message. It's a group send off.
Yeah, stay in touch, Mike. Yeah, there you go. All right.
Sayonara, sucker.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Sayonara sucker. All right, so I wanted to get something in before we bring on the ambassador. I feel like it was a photo finish, I'll be honest with you. We've got, our cup runneth over. But we decided prior to the show, and it's fair, I only get one vote, and Kim gets one vote, and Albert gets one vote. We are going, did you have an issue with the outcome? I think it's good. Yeah.
I have an issue with you only getting one vote. I mean, if your opinion counts for the opinions of 10 men, then should you not have more of a weighty vote?
Oh, wow. That's a very...
Who is having that conversation?
Well, maybe we should have it in the future. But right now, we've decided this is Chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your Chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
Well, as I've noted before, Trump enjoys proclamations, announcements. He likes the theater of being president, as well as the power that comes with being president. Of course, the ways in which public officials, government officials in this country, and world leaders from other countries have to come to him and ask him for things. This is why he's really just feeling it right now, as they ask him for tariff relief, etc. But in that category of things he enjoys doing, you'll find after 100 days, he wants to have a friendly town hall, which is what he got. He got a town hall meeting that was, I believe it was emceed by Bill O'Reilly. Isn't that right?
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A., whatever his name is, who wants to run for president. Yeah.
Sure, Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah. And somebody else is up there too.
Well, they asked Donald Trump, it's been 100 days, and, as Americans, we all want to celebrate with you, Mr. President. But what would you say might have been the mistakes you made over the last 100 days? Here's a piece of this.
Lee says, what's the biggest mistake you think you've made in the first 100 days?
I'll tell you, that's the toughest question I can have, because I don't really believe I've made mistakes.
You made any mistakes?
We're in a transition period. We're in a transition period.
I think Lee is reassured.
I think you're going to see tremendous economic victories over the next period of a year, like far greater than ever imagined. Right now, as I said, we're losing billions and billions of dollars on trade. We're going to make billions and billions of dollars, but it takes a little while. That doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen much faster than people understand.
All right. Lee says, what?
Yeah. So, I mean, apparently he's made no mistakes, at least as far as he's
that
concerned.
whole tariff thing, I guess that wasn't a mistake.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was the wildest bit of spin that I think we've seen, where he comes out, he makes as I say, the announcement. He shows that chart, which was just hatched literally right before they came on, with these figures that were manic and reflected the Mad King's misunderstanding of international trade. And then when that announcement hit, the market tanked, the international markets tanked, and Trump backpedaled. And when he backpedaled, the market soared, and then the proclamation, look at the way I've made the market soar. So that was and then, of course, the 90-day pause. That was the wildest spin that I've seen yet. Like, this was all part of the plan. That became the refrain that was sung from the GOP hymnal. Isn't President Trump a genius for threatening this, imposing this for an hour or whatever it was, and then pulling it back? And all the benefits that will accrue to our nation as a result. That was the heaviest spin I'd seen, because it was such a radical reversal, right? But that wasn't the only thing they talked about last night. Albert, give us a little bit more. This is the town hall again, celebrating 100 days of President Trump's reign.
Those days are over. We have to have fair trade. We're losing billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's not fair. And it's time for the American people to be properly protected by somebody that knows what he's doing. And I know what I'm doing perfectly. It's a little complicated subject. I've got to explain it. I've got to have people that can explain it. But I can tell you that right now we have over 100 countries that are calling us like morning, noon, and night, dying to make a deal. We're in a great position of strength. We'll make great deals. And where we don't make deals, Stephen, we're just going to set the deals. We'll say that country is going to pay a 20% tariff. That country is going to pay 15%. Another one's going to pay 30 or 40% because we have a big, deficit with a certain country. They're going to pay 30, 40, 50, 60%. So we'll just set those deals. I could set those deals tomorrow and do away with negotiating, but we're negotiating with South Korea. We're negotiating with Japan. We're negotiating with a lot of many. India is a very big, they want to make a deal so badly. Okay. I'm not telling anything out of school. We're going to make great deals for America instead of bad. And if I didn't take this hard line, India, as an example, had no interest in negotiating with anybody in Biden or, frankly, anybody with us. They had no fear. They were ripping us really badly, one of the highest tariff nations in the world. They were taking advantage of us. Now they're calling us and they're saying, please, let's make a deal.
When are you going to announce it?
We're in a position of strength.
When are you going to announce? I understand you have a deal with South Korea, Japan, and India. You already got it. When are you announcing it?
Well, we have potential deals with them, yeah. But I'm in, okay, I'll tell you this. I'm in less of a hurry than you are. We are sitting on the catbird seat. They want us. We don't need them.
All right, remember, the folks are nervous, though.
But they've been ripping us. Let me just tell you, they've been ripping us off.
We got that, but the folks...
South Korea has been ripping us off. We pay for their military. When I was there, I got them to pay billions of dollars toward the military. We pay for their military. They take advantage of us on trade. Now, these are friend and foe. We often do better with foe, meaning the enemy, than we do with the friends. The friends have been brutal to this country on trade.
All right, he's riffing a lot, and there is, the only thing you can say, because most of that was made up and it's utter fiction, but the one thing you can say is that, there was an imbalance, you could say, about America and particularly our military expenditures when it came to NATO, South Korea, et cetera. And so he is, if you will, in his grab bag of stuff, identifying something that probably did need to be addressed. And even issues involving trade and international trade generally, but particularly with China when it came to intellectual property that was stolen by the Chinese, et cetera. There is an ongoing concern about relationships with China. I think the biggest problem here is that he's just taken a sledgehammer to it all. And so I don't know that you can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and the economy is suffering immensely. At the Port of Los Angeles, they've already had major drops in the deliveries there. They're down, they're preparing for 35%. They're already down, but 35% fewer deliveries this month. So you're going to have these supply chain issues, it would seem, as a result of this. But this is, again, I think it is Mad King-like that these policies, and I'll talk to the ambassador about it. I'm sure he will put it in a more diplomatic way. That's why he's a diplomat. But maybe he'll agree with me, maybe he won't. But we'll talk to him in a moment. But I do think there is an aspect of Trump that is just he's feeling it right now, and so that was a perfect situation for him to kind of riff as he was. I'll get to Ambassador Rooney in a moment. There was one other thing, and I think it's important because the polls apparently are none too favorable. Isn't that right? That's what I was seeing.
Well, there was a myriad of polls that came out about his approval rating, and all of them, regardless of which agency was reporting, had his approval rating down. But there's a poll that you found out of Axios, and I thought this was an interesting polling. It's about this survey that says Americans think of Trump as a dangerous dictator who poses a threat to democracy. They believe he has overstepped his authority by actions such as the mass firing of federal employees. Axios is saying that 52% of those asked agreed with the provocative statement that Trump is a dangerous dictator whose power should be limited before he destroys American democracy. 52%.
Wow.
83% of Republicans, which is apparently a low percentage for Trump, had favorable views of him and his actions. 35% of independents and 8% of Democrats had favorable views of him. So it's interesting.
It's interesting, and even his GOP support, which has been pretty much unyielding. I mean, it's quite amazing how the GOP has fallen in line. And I can see a lot of reasons to fall in line because you are getting many agenda items pushed through. You're in total control, and this is a president who is purely transactional, and if you can bring him a transaction that he might have an interest in, you can get more through. So it's a very straightforward agenda, but even that is starting to erode some of that GOP support. And of course, but the last thing is, Kim, Trump doesn't believe the polls.
No, I was going to say it's fake news. Yeah. If the polls don't favor him wildly, it's fake. They're fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's more to come, and there's more when it comes to Trump and trade that will affect Christmas. And we will get to that a little bit later in the show. But for now, that's your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time.
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
For another chunk of Trump.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, it's really a pleasure to welcome this guy back. He was with us during the Biden administration. We've yet to talk to him as the GOP has ascended to total control of Washington and of all the levers of power. He represented Florida's 19th Congressional District in the House from 2017 to 2021, and from 2005 to 2008, he served as the ambassador to the Holy See. That's the Vatican, appointed by President George W. Bush, and he wrote a book about diplomacy and the U.S. Holy See relationship. It was titled, and is titled, The Global Vatican. And I'm really anxious to talk to him about the Pope who just passed away, and also this administration's disposition toward so many things that Pope cared so much about. How about it for Ambassador Francis Rooney, everybody? Hello, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I really look forward to talking to you because I remember in our last conversation, which was a while ago, but I still recall it, you were quite, I would say, reasonable in your assessment of some of the challenges that the country faces. And at that time, Biden was the president. As a new president has taken power with a far different vision and it seems sort of a grievance-filled agenda. I'm anxious to get your thoughts, but I'm also anxious, as I was just saying in the introduction, to get your thoughts in the context of what you know so well, which was the disposition of a progressive pope, I guess you might call him, toward many of the issues that this current administration, representing your party, the GOP, at least on some level, has taken almost an oppositional view of. I mean, climate. I mean, human rights. I mean, this sort of thing. Can you speak to all of this, Ambassador Rooney?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm not sure what my party is anymore. Where's Ronald Reagan? Where's 41 and 43? We're out in some dangerous territory here, and a lot of historic norms are being uprooted. A lot of very aggressive language is being used, and I think people are scared. I think the polling that you just showed, if 52% of people are concerned, that means 12% are the former historic Republicans who probably voted for Trump like I did because I didn't want socialism, but I'm not so happy right now.
I've just spent some time in Tennessee, and what I was getting, because there are a lot of folks who voted for Trump there, there is a sense along the lines of what you just said, which is, well, I voted for him because those Democrats are the big bad wolf. What was it in the Biden administration that you thought, well, this really is the beginning of socialism here? Well, I'm just curious if we follow up on that.
Well, I didn't like either of the big spending bills. COVID was over. There was no reason to do that. He just wanted to get this liberal agenda out there and fund it, and he wasted a lot of money.
And liberal agenda, you mean like green energy type stuff?
Yeah, the so-called Build Back Better and the so-called Reduce Inflation bill. I think that green energy, non-combustible engines, is going to come anyway. The market will deliver those, and the market's trying to deliver them right now if they wouldn't distort the market with these subsidies. Just ask Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford. He'll tell you.
Sure. I mean, look at Texas. We had the story yesterday. I mean, their wind and solar energy is pulling up to the levels of what they're getting from fossil fuel energy in Texas. It's quite impressive. So even a state which is all oil and gas, I mean, that's Texas, is recognizing what you're saying, which is that the markets will take care of that. Now there's wild, aggressive control of the markets by this president. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unhinged things taking place right now. A lot of very aggressive behavior, a lot of talk about disobeying court decisions. It may come down to the Supreme Court protecting our institutions in this country.
And the Supreme Court, has always, I'd suggest, on some level been compromised, but it would really appear, wouldn't you say, Ambassador, that you have a court that's very much compromised? I'm not saying it's completely over, but it's a pay-to-play court in a couple of spots.
Yeah, they've leaned in for Trump on a few things, but I think that when you get to the ultimate, what you call it, the puke point, when he does something that's just way too far, I'm counting on John Roberts to protect us.
Now let's talk about this Pope, and I'll double back and we'll get to some of the politics of America as well, because I think things should dovetail. This Pope really seemed to be signaling a new age in the Catholic Church. I know that's probably been said about other popes in the past, because every bit of papal leadership has had its own stamp. But this guy really seemed to see us as humans in this place as conservators of the planet. He was very welcoming of the outsider. He seemed to reflect almost just an openness to even the question of gays in the church, as you know. That became something that this Pope who just passed away, Pope Francis, embraced.
Yeah, he may have been the most humankind-centric Pope since Leo XIII. And he focused on people. He focused on marginalized people. And how can a church argue with that? I mean, that's what a church ought to do, really.
He took on Trump a bit, too. He took on the GOP agenda. I mean, as it became, in his vision, I would suggest, this is my word, not his, but I'll just say it was kind of an ugly agenda against the backdrop of what he believed. He pushed back on it.
He pushed back strongly on the immigration business. And I loved his quote when he went to Lampedusa, opposing the globalization of indifference to migrants. And, we need to solve the immigration problem. The American people want the immigration problem solved. but we need to do it in a rational manner. That means stop people from coming in, which I will say Trump's done, and then vet them and only let people in that are clean and contribute to the society and can have a job. The rest of them, I'm not sure we need them.
Yeah, it's, the immigration issue, I think Democrats and Republicans both agree that it's an issue, and both parties have used it as a cudgel politically.
But, if it hadn't been for Harry Reid, George Bush would have solved this in 2007 with his comprehensive immigration reform bill, which was a bipartisan bill. But the unions fought it, and he couldn't get it through. And some of the crazy conservatives that called it amnesty said the same thing.
And that same dance was done recently, right, Ambassador, in the last year?
Yeah, Marco Rubio got it passed through the Senate, but Boehner wouldn't bring it up in the House.
Right. I mean, you realize how politics get in the way of good ideas and even bipartisan ideas. Yeah. So you're the diplomat. Tell me how you see the state of diplomacy. It seems to me as though this administration has gone at, and this the Supreme Court won't save us from. So this is really, I'm curious, as to a strategy that you might suggest now. This administration has gone after our allies, Canada and Mexico, getting smack-talked, getting threatened, the Panama Canal, Greenland, Middle East. There's just the footprint of aggression, either aggressive rhetoric or literal military flexes on the part of America seems pretty broad.
Yeah, I keep thinking of one of the Chinese guys, maybe it was Mao, when they said, what's going to be the impact of the French Revolution? He said, it's too early to tell. Mm-hmm. There's things going on right now, rocks being tossed up in the air and coming down a different place vis-a-vis our longtime relationships with our best allies. And we don't know what kind of damage is being done to the psychology of our allies. I mean, they're feeling a vulnerability they haven't had to feel since 1948. They're confused. Where is the United States here? And I'm concerned about the damage that could be done there. And I think some of the hedge fund guys, I think it might have been Ray Dalio and Bill Ackman, said it pretty well, that they're doing serious damage to the fiber of our relationships with our European allies.
Yeah, there's reputational harm that's real, and it's taken us decades. You know this probably better than anyone, or better, and anyone in this conversation, that it takes decades. That post-World War II period, America stood for so much, and we paid for so much. We really were the shining light. I don't know how you would characterize us now.
I think we've frittered away the gains of World War II and the Marshall Plan. And we've empowered some right-wing parties in Europe that, who knows where that stuff could go. But it's different in Europe when you get those kinds of sentiments. We've seen that before, and it's not good.
As you look at Europe and you look at Orban and those who have taken kind of this softer right-wing power, I see us as maybe falling into a vulnerable category that way, where, you still have the vote in all these different countries, of course, but we know the vote just doesn't really matter often. You still have opposition, but, you have opposition kind of like you have opposition at a Harlem Globetrotters game. Tell me how this all games out. I mean, if you're back in a Trump cabinet, or you're back with the president's ear in any way, what's the blueprint for getting out of this, or at least, stopping the bleeding?
What I'm hoping is that, like the first term, we come to find out that he's a lot more bluster and talk than he is act, and that he's going to get these guys in one by one. They're going to kiss the ring. He's going to get feted. He's going to feel real good about it. And he'll cut some deal that doesn't really change the economics that much. That's what I'm hoping. Yeah. That's what happened in the first term.
Yeah, I mean, there is a part of, I think it's one of the things that propelled him to power. There's a part of the thinking which is, he is bluster. He talks a lot. He likes to talk probably too much, and he smack talks everybody because he feels, whatever the reason is. But he won't really do anything. But then he deports these people, goes with a very aggressive, deports without, you could have deported these people, Francis Rooney. This is true. These immigration courts, they're like traffic courts. It's not real hard. It doesn't move like over multiple days like a murder trial. And I'm surprised that they just didn't go through that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not go through the process, show them the evidence, and the guy's gone the next afternoon?
Yeah. And
because we are a nation of due process, and I don't think it's good to forget that.
And I would say it's one of the things that I think represents a cornerstone of America. When you come here to start a business, when you come here as an aspiring immigrant, don't you look toward the American justice system will give me a fair shake. The law and order aspects of this country, I think, are a real important part of our reputation, don't you think?
I do. I think rule of law and a free press are the two most important institutions to guarantee a free state and a free people.
So when you look at this guy who's now head of your party, and as you say, you don't recognize your party now.
I think George W. is head of my party.
Exactly. Okay, so time stopped for you. All right. It's, you know, but where does that leave people like you? There are a lot of people like you.
Yeah, we're pretty much like the Israelis wandering through the desert. You know, I mean, I spoke to a group of people yesterday, retirees, that are asking these same questions. They're very concerned about their grandkids. And I said, I think it will sort out somehow or another. It may take getting through this Trump period of boundary layer turbulence, but we're still a strong country. We have strong institutions. We have a free press. We have the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I would say to you that these institutions are taking on water, though, that those people you speak to who have grandkids and who have those concerns, they're right to have these concerns. I mean,
I've got grandkids. I'm concerned about it.
There you go. I mean, when you mentioned the free press, I mean, Donald Trump has gone after the free press, as you know. His lawsuits have borne fruit for him. You know, when he went after ABC said, let's just settle. It's easier to settle. Pay the guy $50 million. Right.
Remember New York Times versus Sullivan and the Pentagon Papers. They need to fight. They need to defend the freedom of the press. That's what they're there for. And if we lose that, we have a real problem. We're right down there with Venezuela.
Yeah. And it does appear that there's an unrelenting, aggressive push to undermine the press, right? Facts get in the way of the agenda.
I mean, I think you have the New York Times and the Washington Post, but I don't know how much else you've got right now.
And you have an attempt, as you know, to sue both. I mean, Trump is always trying to cook up a suit or an investigation of some kind, it would seem. So, well, as we wrap up, Ambassador, I just see all of these areas. I see how you've changed. You know, I see all these areas of potential issue, and for you, a real painful period, if I can use those words, because I think you're seeing when you have to say, well, I'm counting on the Supreme Court to essentially save the republic. I think, you know, that's a five-alarm fire.
Look at a couple of other data points, if I have 1 second.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, imagine we have J.D. Vance pushing on the president a most anti-Republican, pro-labor Secretary of Labor. We could have got a better deal out of Joe Biden. I mean, where's this stuff coming from? And now they're all talking about raising tax rates and greedy corporations. Well, we're supposed to be the people that believe in capitalism, believe in the good that corporations do by hiring people, making good products that people want to pay for. You know, what part of the sand is our feet in? Are our feet in?
Sure. I mean, don't you think the propaganda, I'm just going to call it that's associated with these tariffs and trying to bring American manufacturing back is just that? I mean, there's an absurdity to it.
Well, look at our cost structure. We could never compete. What do you want to make? You want to make shirts? You want to have someone with 40% benefits of Social Security and Medicare and all that, 45% benefits plus a minimum wage making shirts? There's no way. You need to make those shirts in Bangladesh.
Sure, exactly. And when talking about trade and talking about China, you know this. But China is not ringing your phone off the hook, Donald Trump. We know that. It's not the Chinese style. The whole Trump style and the Chinese style couldn't be more opposite. I mean, he has a very in-your-face style, and they have a very, we'll wait. We've got a long, long history, and we don't need America. And I feel as though we're getting on an adversarial footing that's quite dangerous. Do you agree?
Well, they do have a perspective that no Western mind can handle and totally understand. And like the comment about the French Revolution, we think in it's like they used to say about Iran. We play checkers and they play chess.
They just, I think, have a longer time horizon than, and we, Trump particularly, I would say, is I want it now. Everything's very cranked up to 10, Ambassador. Yeah. And I don't know that is so effective, particularly with the Chinese.
Tariffs has never worked for anybody yet. I don't think it's going to work for him.
Yeah.
And your survey is a canary in a coal mine about people feeling unease. And as soon as these prices start to go up, and you need to know that like 80% of dimension lumber and plywood comes out of Canada. So what's going to happen to house prices?
Oh, building materials across the board are going to become so very expensive. Yeah.
The guy's playing with fire. I'm worried that he's going to screw it up so bad we'll never elect another Republican. It'll be like after Watergate or something. Take 10 years to rebuild.
Here's the good news, bad news. The Republicans may never give up power. I mean, this is not a crew that gives up power easily. And with all respect, because I know they were your party, but as you say, you can't recognize it right at the moment. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump and those around him will willingly give up power, even if they were to lose a fair election. I mean, look at what happened in 2020.
Yeah, that's why I departed with Trump greatly over January 6th and over the election.
Yeah.
The only two people that really had an election beef were Al Gore and Richard Nixon.
Sure. I love that you said that, because I think that is everything. Like, to me, you don't have to evaluate policy, the man, etc. The fomenting of that act was enough, and the total denial of the loss. And yet now you see so many who thought as you do now, and who articulated that they thought as you do now. So many in the party. I mean, high-profile members of his party in the Senate and in Congress and the House, completely reversing it. It's become the litmus test, as you know, for FBI agents. Do you believe that the 2020 election was legitimate?
Yeah, and I hate to see so many really good people, good friends of mine, that are just under the Trump thumb.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary time, I think, when things like that litmus test question, these things are determinative of who will inhabit this administration. The last thing I would say—
we're back to the Supreme Court. We're back to John Roberts and the Supreme Court, and it may be just like it was in Marbury Madison. It may be like it was with FDR, that in the crucial moments of our country, the Supreme Court steps in to preserve our institutions.
This is breaking news. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will assume the National Security Advisor duties as Mike Waltz is headed to the UN. They didn't really get rid of Waltz. They just pushed him over. That had to be alarming to you as someone who's dealt with secure affairs for so long. I mean, the use of the signal chat for what would be— yeah.
Never should have done it. And Mike should know better, okay, given the business he's been in most of his life. And he's a decent guy. I mean, I served with him in Congress, but I don't know why they were ever doing any of that stuff. And why is this Besant guy got his wife on there? This is classified stuff.
And it wasn't their first rodeo. I mean, they used that signal chat, as you know, over and over and over again. I mean, it's really troubling. I'll tell you, I think you've got a bunch of reckless amateurs at the switch. That's what it feels like. So when I hear from you, well, he knows what he's doing, this guy, I go, wow, does he? Why, as you say, then, does he do these things that just seem to be so on the reckless side?
No, I just said Michael Waltz is a decent guy.
Right.
I don't know why he did what he did. Maybe the whole culture is so corrupted. But yeah, where are the days of Jim Baker and Cyrus Vance and Madeleine Albright and, of course, Henry Kissinger? We don't have that stuff now.
Yeah, it really does feel like a circus, and it's a circus during a time where things have to be handled so deftly, Ambassador. And I'm really I'm quite anxious about the future, and that we have to put all our hopes at the feet of the Supreme Court is scary, because they've already conferred to Trump tremendous power with that immunity decision, don't you think?
They did, but there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, and the American people. Well, someone said one time, I can't remember who it was, slow to anger,
yeah,
but fierce to respond. And if people are losing confidence, that will spread. I mean, there's a lot more people than just Democrats that are concerned about this.
Let me finally double back to the Vatican, where you spent so much time, and ask you about who will likely ascend to succeed this Pope Francis, who was so transformative?
It's hard to say. I would think that they'll go for someone who kind of splits the difference a little bit, that is not quite as far out there as Pope Francis's words are, but has a lot of the same principles and keeps warm the focus on marginalized people and the human condition. At the same time, maybe with a little more focus on church doctrine too. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. It's going to be kind of how do we find someone that's in the middle of the road, not on either side of it?
So is that 2 steps forward and 1 step back, maybe?
No, I think that it's preserving the best of Pope Francis and maybe eliminating a few things that might have been a little more excessive.
I will tell you that in my 2 conversations with you, I totally get why you were a good diplomat. You are, you just, the way you frame things, it's terrific. We need probably more of that and a little less smack talking from this current administration. I want to mention your book again and encourage everybody to check it out, The Global Vatican. And, you've, as I say, you've spent so much time within the culture of Washington and then also within the culture of the Catholic Church and the Vatican. You really represent quite a special perspective. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, I look forward to the next time. Ambassador Francis Rooney, everybody. See you again soon.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. Great to have you here. Thank you to our Patreon and PayPal supporters. You can keep the show growing and going. Be a supporter with a one-time or monthly contribution. You can go to the markthompsonshow.com. The markthompsonshow.com. I have to put the in there. Otherwise, you end up at a ventriloquist website. He's also named Mark Thompson. The markthompsonshow.com. And there are hot links to Patreon and PayPal where you can be part of the community that supports us. I will tell you that we are trying to raise money right now because of certain changes within the ad space of YouTube. Revenues are horribly down, like we're really in a red zone area. So we are beginning what will be our big spring, what we call it, Kim? Was it the late spring fundraising drive?
That's what you wanted to call it. I don't think that's very sexy, but
what do you like, Kim?
I don't know. I don't have anything better. Late spring fundraising drive it is.
No, okay, fine. Thank you, Kim. You're very, very, very supportive as always.
I think I had suggested Mark's Marathon.
But that doesn't speak to what it is.
Yeah, but do we have to clarify the season?
No, it's not. No, that I don't mind that, but it doesn't talk about fundraising. Mark's Marathon. That could be what we put on our sneakers and we run.
Well, we're running to save the show, Mark.
All right. I don't want to argue with Kim.
I blame you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, it's mine. Anyway, I welcome everyone who is a part of the Super Chat and Super Sticker community and all those who are already part of our Patreon and PayPal community. There are many of you who watch this show and already support it, so thank you. Mark, spring thing or thung. It's not bad. Mark's Money Marathon. Thank you, inlays. I think you should apologize, Kim, for not thinking of that. Mark's
I'm sorry,
Money. Yeah, I mean,
I like Tom's Spring Ka-ching.
Spring Ka-ching. I actually do like that.
Tom brings it.
Joan says Mark's Dash for Cash. Where is that, Albert? There it is.
Oops, sorry.
Joan Hollywood. Mark's Dash for Cash. Albert, are you making note of all of these things? Because they're all very good ideas.
Albert, thank you.
We should just use all of them, but at separate times. We should just bank all of them, yeah.
You're right.
We don't have to marry one of them. We can marry all of them.
I also support Mark Thompson, the ventriloquist, says Rick S.
That's not fake. That's real.
Very, very good. I tried to donate, but the dollar donation can't be sent from Europe, says Beth Farmer. What?
Maybe you can only send euros from the EU or pounds.
Oh my God! Yeah, you can you can send euros because we've had people send euros.
Yeah,
but I don't know. But thank you for trying, I guess. So what have we decided it's going to be then? What if Mark Thompson, the ventriloquist, was the puppet of Mark Thompson? What if Mark Thompson was that would be a show I would love to see, where I'm the puppet of the ventriloquist. Yes, I agree.
I mean, Mark's Dash for Cash did have a $2 sticker to it, so maybe that's in the lead for now. But
you're right.
We'll still think about it.
Dash for Cash, making a note. And also what was the ka-ching one? I like that too.
Spring ka-ching.
Spring ka-ching. Yeah.
I thought that was clever.
I think that is clever. There were a couple of other ones too. Mark, there was a straightforward Mark's Money Marathon. Yeah. All right. So it's Dash for Cash and Spring ka-ching. So I first want to recognize everybody who has helped with the fundraising in addition to helping us name it. And I think in that spirit, I have to recognize what I've just seen. Audrey W. Hello and well, safety wishes to all. It's just been too uncrazy. It has been too uncrazy. What does she mean by that, Kim? You can explain it. Audrey. You're muted, but you can explain it when you're unmute.
Sorry, I was sneezing. It is, I don't know exactly what she has to say about that. I'm not sure what it means. It has been crazy. Uncrazy means it hasn't been crazy, but I think it's been crazy.
I think, and this is my interpretation of it, Kim, that Audrey W., recognizing my return to the show after a brief hiatus, seeing my mother, etc., I think Audrey is recognizing that my presence has made it uncrazy. That's what I see.
Maybe what she's saying is it's been uncrazy without you, and now that you're back, I blame you.
Wow, there is a lot there. But what I do recognize, regardless of interpretation, and happy to receive supplemental messaging to help with interpretation, Audrey W. helps the show with a huge donation of $50.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Audrey. I'd like to give you a British thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Really, really cool. Also, too crazy upside down world is what Audrey's saying. Yeah, I see. Well, it's true. I mean, it is that. It is an upside down world. And I do think we have a responsibility to follow it all. So that's why we do it. And I'll have something on that for you in a moment. Can we get to some of these others? Right, welcome back. We missed you, but your team was awesome, says Vivian L. Shawa. Big shout out. Thank you, Vivian.
Big shout out.
Yeah. $20 super chat. And Gordon with a $3 super sticker. Thank you, Gordon. Luis, who is, and I just made this determination because I went through, he is, of course, an OG of the show.
Yeah.
But he also has, apparently, and I was just going through, on Thompson Terrace in the metaverse, Luis does have his own statue. Yeah. It's very cool.
Is he holding a guitar? Because he's very rock and roll, Luis.
It's funny you asked that because I couldn't get a sense of what they're. I'm told they're building the statue, that it's being erected, but so I don't know exactly what it is. But you're right. I'll put that in that he should be holding a guitar or listening to music on headphones or something.
Yeah.
Luis for the $4.99 super chat says self-enrichment. Sure, all the proceeds from the sneakers, Bibles, hats, etc., are all going to children now starving because of the economy now tanking.
That's not happening. No.
All going to Donald while children starve because the economy is not tanking. Yeah, all that money goes to Donald. Exactly. I got it. Going to D. Trump sounds like the Mad King. Of course he does. And that's why I call him the Mad King all the time. Thank you, Harry Magnan. Vilma, have you ever noticed that Trump gets the cliff notes of the executive notes that he signs? That's true. Trump doesn't read. It's all about what people tell him it is, says Vilma Devlin with a $10 super chat, and thank you. And that's right. What Vilma says is correct. He is at those signing ceremonies, which, as you know, populated his first 100 days in a big way. He is given the summary of what the executive order specifies, and then he signs it. You can tell me, well, no, Mark, he met with everybody and he understands what all these except. No, he didn't. You know that. He didn't.
Might as well just use the auto pen.
Right. How about that auto pen? Wes Theory, who's also OG.
Thank you so much.
I thank you for this. Wes, I watched it. That was some panel. This is the town hall. After Trump, they had Bannon talking and agreeing slightly on a point with James Carville. Quite an interesting mix of people on that town hall. It was Carville. It was Stephen A. Smith. It was Bill O'Reilly.
And Cuomo. Chris Cuomo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bannon's a scary figure. We've got very scary people in control of the U.S. government right now. Kathleen Bryant, thank you. Straight up super sticker. Kathleen, with us all the while. Big shout out. $20 super sticker. Really appreciate that as we are deep in the
spring ka-ching.
Spring ka-ching, baby. You know it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being part of things. How about Wakanda and read this for me, Albert, because you speak Luis and I do not.
Asgard, like the Norse mythology, like land, I guess. Yeah, Asgard.
Okay. Go, read me the whole comment.
Oh, how about Wakanda and Asgard, Donnie T? Those places are totally ripping us off. Can we get some vibranium from Wakanda or that cool hammer from Asgard?
Yeah, Asgard is a mythological place, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So is Wakanda, totally made up place in
right.
So maybe he wants Trump to put tariffs on those places.
I was just about to say. I mean, you gotta hit him, mythological or not. The tariffs are real, and we want real checks if you want to be part of the American program. Super sticker from Kathleen Marshall for $20. Thank you.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Kathleen Marshall, the $20 super. This is, again, part of our big spring ka-ching to try to raise money for the show. Who's this guy talking over the Kim and Michael show? taking over the Kim and Michael. Yeah. Michael's great, isn't he? Edward Campbell, thank you for that. And thank you for the $5 super chat, pal. Appreciate that.
Big shout out.
Yeah.
Look how people were stepping up for the spring ka-ching.
Yeah, it really is good. Yeah. And thank you for jumping on PayPal and on Patreon also. And as I say under this video, there are click-throughs to both. But yeah, we love our audience and we are really in need of our audience. So that's why we're running the Spring Ka-ching, Dash for Cash, the Money Marathon. But that's not what we're all about. It's just that we wanted to stop and note that we appreciate your support. It's funny, at the beginning of this show, we were trying to raise money to get it on the air and keep it on the air. And so it was kind of obnoxious that I had to, shout out to the audience all the time and ask them for support. But we have really backed off on that. Like, I'll do an entire show and not even mention it, or I'll mention it once, typically. But now we're at a place where we may have to just lean in a little harder because the ad revenues are drying up. They're going away. And there's a reason for that that's political, and there's a reason for that that's probably algorithmic. But whatever the reasons, we need your help. So thank you. It was a sure thing, says Wada. Yeah, I agree. Sure is. Thank Mr. Shore for filling in. I will indeed. He'll
be back tomorrow. He'll pop in for his normal segment, right?
Yeah, and we will shower him with praise. By the way, the one thing that, and then we'll get to David Katz and some of the stuff going on with the major legal decisions today. But I did get emails, several of them, regarding Michael's lack of a mug from the show, and people are not happy.
No.
But you end up with a couple of stories emerging, one of which I was going to try to read you one of these emails that sort of annoyed with me for enough already.
Yeah, he says he has nowhere to put his Coachella Valley coffee. It's distressing, really.
Yeah. Well, so I did get a bunch of emails, and we do listen. And
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Oh, Mark, this has gone on way too long. Heather sent you money for a mug for Michael. It is true. Heather did jump on our super sticker and send us money. He continues to talk about it. The chat continues to comment on it. I'm sure you can find something else to rib him about. Please send him a mug already.
Why are you yelling?
I'm tired of hearing about it constantly.
Why are you yelling?
Wow. Thank you. I've been a fan beginning with your KGO stint, and been with you for every single show since you went on YouTube. Wow.
What?
Wow, very impressive. Kathy O, thank you, Kathy O, for the shock treatment of telling me that we need to get Michael a mug. And I will tell you that I offered him a mug, and he goes, I think it's a better thing that you don't give me a mug. And we talk about the fact that you never give me. So I'm just.
Oh, you're blaming him. Uncle Russ is calling this Muggate.
Yeah, I think that at least that's the way I remember it. He might have a different story, but we'll definitely get him a mug because I'm sick of being told that he should have a. Denise Cat, thank you for a $20 super sticker. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
And a thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate it. I'll give you
thank you.
Muggate 2025. Get sure his mug. All right, I will. Anyway, it's been, and by the way, the Coachella Valley coffee, absolutely delicious, and I missed it all during my trip. By the way, if you haven't, use our discount at Coachella Valley Coffee. This is a boutique roastery. Best coffee I've ever tasted. I've had coffee in Vietnam. I've had Turkish coffee. I've had coffee in Paris and coffee in London. You can imagine someone of my, I'm saying to you that I've had coffee all across the world.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've had coffee served by kings and princes, and no coffee approaches the richness, the robust wonder of Coachella Valley coffee. There's the Elgato Espresso, one of my favorites.
Can you say it? You say it the way you normally say it. That makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Could you do that?
What is the Elgato? The Elgato Espresso?
When you do the accent and then make the voice deep. Can you do deep it and make it deeper?
Oh, deep it, of course.
Yeah.
Deep it,
Can you
baby.
do that?
Yes, deep it.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
That's not what I wanted to hear. No.
Talk about a mood killer.
You
Wow.
ruined it for me.
There it is, though. The Ocotillo Espresso. Oh, my God. It's so riquísimo. Oh, yes. Find the coffee that you love at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. A 10% off, or as they say, 10%, and you can get it with our code, MarkT, at checkout. Order coffee, tea, spices. The cold brew is coming. They have these great cold brews. So as the weather gets warmer, or if you're in a part of the world where the weather is warm, get it. They will ship internationally. And again, use the code MarkT for 10% off. And Ren gives us this. Here's some money toward Muggate. We love all the Mark Thompson Show people. Yeah. Thank you for the 20 and a big shout out to Ren.
Big shout out.
Ren is an OG of this show. That should be on a mug. Muggate 2025. You're right. We should get. By the way, there is some really cool merch news coming in addition to everything else. So I enjoy this show, says Jim Eaton. How about it? Thank you for the $2 super chat, my friend. Yeah, thank you, Jim Eaton. Vicky and Sausalito, Mark, I adore you, but I love it. I don't even want to read anymore. I adore you, but.
Just stop right there.
Yes, it's great.
Girl, you just woo.
I will read on, but normally I just like to stop at Mark, I adore you, but wanted you to be tougher on that infuriating ambassador.
Ooh.
Well, I'll tell you two things. And I hear this from time to time. Sometimes I'll just say kind of my tendency to be gracious to someone and just in general to be gracious to people, it does get in the way of real flame throwing, Now, just reviewing quickly in my mind, and maybe you can help me, Vicky and Sausalito, maybe you can help me remember where you would have leaned back in. I mean, I would, of course, you know where I am on this, and I would say, if you're looking for the Supreme Court to save you, and again, David Katz is coming up. He knows the Supreme Court so very well, but he knows the court system so well. And basically, the ambassador said, I'm looking for the Supreme Court to help us. But you've got an administration that doesn't seem to respect the court. So maybe that's what you were looking for me to lean back on him. And I was also and I also was making the point I thought about tariffs and about him all over the economy and about smack talking our allies. I feel like I brought all that stuff up, but you're when you wanted me to be tougher, are you saying you wanted me to argue with him over something? I'm just unclear.
Perhaps, and in the chat, I noticed people were pointing out his devotion to George W. and also Kissinger, like these types of people.
Look, I mean, listen, I mean, I could have gone after him with that. Kissinger's a war criminal. Bush is a war criminal. It was an illegal war that they launched with of course. I mean, I can relitigate that, and essentially, I don't know how that helps in the current conversation. I agree completely. I mean, it's like having Rothman on and going, hey, I want to go back to this Nixon thing. How could you work for Richard Nixon? Explain that to me. Okay. And he goes, well, at the time I was a young staffer and I saw opportunities. Wait. You could have been a young staffer with the Democrats. Why did you go to Richard Nixon? I mean, it's but that doesn't get me anywhere. So I think that's sort of the place from which I'm coming. And it may not be, so I just wasn't here to litigate his Bush years or his disposition toward Kissinger and the Iraq War, et cetera. I mean,
I thought that interview gave me hope, because what I heard was an older Republican, someone who's kind of entrenched in that old GOP party, talking about freedom of the press, talking about respecting the decisions of the courts, talking about the Constitution, talking about due process and respecting the way we do things in America and what makes us who we are. And I found places that we truly agree. And that, if anything, hearing that from Ambassador Rooney gave me hope that maybe we're not so far apart on things.
Yeah, I do think that he embraced those things and he talked about those things, and that was helpful to hear that out of the mouth of a GOPer. The thing I would have come back on, I might have come back on, and you heard me talk about how he's attacking the press, he's attacking the courts. You heard me mention the litmus test for the FBI now about having to believe the lie of the 2020 election. I thought I brought these things up, maybe not combatively enough for some people in our audience, but that was sort of, in the moment, I felt all you were going to get. I thought, some kind of takedown of this guy personally, of his beliefs that he's long held these right-wing beliefs. For example, I pressed on him on the socialism. Remember, he said the socialist, I said, what was it about Joe Biden that you thought was so socialist? I mean, obviously, and I could have easily said, well, we have corporate socialism now, right? That's what the Republicans are doing. That's what Elon Musk wants, all these tax subsidies. This is a socialism for the rich. So again, I can get into that, but I felt as though that would be a distraction from the essential thread I was trying to follow. So again, these are all conversations that, potential conversations and strategies for conversations that I could have. But I take your point, and maybe I should, try to be tougher in the future.
One thing I thought was interesting is that he said he voted for Trump because he was worried about government spending, that he didn't want the, Democrats to spend us into, oblivion or what have you.
Yeah.
And I saw the story. As a matter of fact, we had it yesterday, but I don't know if we really touched on it, that despite promises to cut spending during the campaign and the first few months in office, President Trump's federal government, get this, Mark, they've spent more than $200 billion more in the first 100 days compared to the same time period last year. You're looking for Trump to save you money. That is not happening. The government is now spending more day to day than was spent in 9 of the 10 last years.
I love that statistic, and we know he's going to spend more because that's what he does. He drives every business he's ever run into bankruptcy. He skates on the debt. And we know that he's going to do that here. And let me just say this. If I brought that up to him, he'd go, I know. I, like so many, thought that he talked a good game. He even said this, but we didn't think he'd follow through on it. So, I mean, again, I think indicting the guy's vote for him, it's sort of easy. And they're always going to go to, I didn't think he'd be like this. I mean, I know he talked about, but there was a wide body of belief that suggested that he wasn't going to follow through on it. I've got David waiting. I got to get to it. But CC Ryder, whose opinion I do respect, as I do everyone's, but I'm just saying I think she's an accomplished journalist. Asking plain black and white questions is not flamethrowing or taking them down. It is simply asking questions that should be asked. I thought I did some of that, but I don't know. I'll go back now based on this and look at that conversation again. But again, I thought we brought up all of that stuff. So anyway, smash the like button if you would. It helps us. And the great Katz next. Yeah.
This is Mark Thompson.
No, I see. I didn't know what that was, but it was oddly calming. Thank you. Look, we got a bit of David Katz and his magic on News Nation, I think. Is that where this is from, Albert? Play a little bit of David Katz on News Nation. This is just in the last day or so.
David, Vice President J.D. Vance, we remember how all of that unfolded in the Oval Office. Some folks in your party called it an ambush by J.D. Vance that led to the explosion and Zelensky virtually being thrown out of the White House. But now J.D. Vance is saying that the United States might have to take a step back if a deal is not reached between Ukraine and Russia. Let's listen to that. I'll let you respond.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians.
David, is there a point where the U.S. should walk away?
Well, first of all, I'm so glad to hear Rena, a Republican, say those things, because I'm a Democrat who worked for President Reagan for 6 years. I remember the Cold War really well. I remember Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. And Trump ought to be saying to Putin, stop bombing and killing and raping and pillaging Ukraine.
No. I mean, David Katz, well, let me just introduce him now. This is the former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney. John joins us on Thursdays, David Katz, but across the English-speaking world, he offers those kinds of takes on politics and all that. You've been very busy, of course, because the news has come out fast and furious. I watched that entire interview. That seemed to be a pretty civil exchange, and so, again, I know you do these things on Fox News Channel, also on News Nation, et cetera. And there can be degrees of civility that differ, right?
Well, there was a fellow named Alan Combs about 15 or 20 years ago. And when Sean Hannity made his TV show, they wanted to have that balance. Now, it seemed like Sean Hannity always had the best lines. He always got to sort of win the chess game with Combs. But, Combs tried as hard as he could. And that's what I try to do on these stations. But obviously do it, Mark. And I just heard you talking about whether you were maybe too civil. And I really don't think you can be too civil in one of those exchanges. I think having a polite conversation, no matter how passionately you care about things. I don't know if anybody's seen, I used to be on CNN a lot in 2018 and 19, and then they went to a different format and they moved to Atlanta. It made hard to do the show from LA, but we did it at night. And we had somebody from the left, somebody from the right, and I was the umpire. So that was the best work I ever had. The host would turn to me, Mark, and say, you're a former assistant U.S. attorney. Tell us, Mr. Katz, what is the law on that? And normally the law was all against Trump, first round. And I got to say that. And my friend said, how come you don't say anything good about what Trump is doing legally? I said, well, let Trump do something legal. I'll say it's legal. But if he keeps doing illegal things, and of course, now this term, we've had just an orgy of illegality and unconstitutional acts by Trump. But my point was that I think it's always good. Now, if you watch CNN at night, they have 5 different guests on and a presenter, and all they do is scream at each other. In my opinion, the show now on CNN is completely unwatchable. One is too many guests, but one is that they all just scream at each other, and it becomes a food fight. And there are some people who like that. That was what the Jerry Springer show. But that's not what I think is the way that we ought to have legal and political discourse. And I know I just sound like another guest who's buttering up the presenter. But Mark, I think that you and Kim, you do it really well. And you have some people on who aren't in agreement with you. And I think that is the proper way. And, I always say you guys can ask me any questions. And I try to say, not what's right or what's left, but what's right and not wrong. And it is a gripe that obviously presenters and stations who are very smart, Mark, and clever, they know what information sort of drives their viewers, their typical viewers, in a certain direction. And it always bothers me when they hold back certain facts that I think are really relevant. And I try to bring the facts out. You know, when we talked about Abrego Garcia the other day, it might have been with Kim, it might have been with you. I brought up the fact that he had this domestic violence conviction, that his wife had gotten a restraining order against him, because I thought it was important. I didn't think it mattered at all to whether he'd gotten due process of law. I didn't think it mattered at all to whether he should be brought back, having been wrongly sent to this El Salvador hellhole prison. But I did think it was relevant. And now you watch Trump in this crazy interview that he gave to ABC, where he demeaned the guy. I agreed to do the interview with you guys, ABC. I didn't know who the hell you were, but I figured that was probably better if I didn't know who the hell you were. And to tell a famous journalist he doesn't know who the hell he is, that's all designed. That's all part of Trump's show. But my point is, what's the first thing he said about Abrego Garcia? If he were a gentleman, I would have brought him back, but he has this domestic violence conviction. Everybody seems to forget about the fact that he beat his wife and she went and got a protective order. It was going to be the top of the rhetoric about the case, and I didn't want to leave it out of what I told your audience. And I think it gripes me all the time. I watch MSNBC and I think, no, there's two facts that you know are out there and you don't mention them. And of course, Fox is completely, almost completely fake news. If you look at like Laura Ingraham, who I've been on with, and you look at Hannity and you look at whoever the hell they have on that show there. And last one thing about Fox, they're supposed to be funny at night. They have that show and they're not funny the way that you could be, the way that Colbert is. They're just snarky and mean-spirited. That's really not the essence of comedy in my book.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't catch a lot of that show, the Greg Gutfeld show or whatever. Yeah, but I know that they peacock about the ratings and you know, again, the media landscape is changing. It's interesting.
His only saving grace, Mark Gutfeld, is that he went to Berkeley.
Is that right? Wow.
You had to know the frat boys. No. One of those frat boys was going to turn into Gutfeld.
That's wild. That's absolutely wild. Well, David, I want to ask you first about, let's get into the legal stuff, and then I'll double back and everybody, I will comment on a couple of things with the ambassador conversation, but thank you for your words on that. Today, David, the court, a federal judge actually put a stop to the deportation of these identified illegal immigrants, those who are here in this country illegally. He's put a stop, this judge has, to using the Alien and Enemies Act to essentially fly the flag that allows these deportations. Even, by the way, just as an aside, and then I'll please I need you to weigh in on this, but even if you use that act, those people are still entitled to some kind of due process, are they not? I mean, in other words, this is only part of it, the Alien Enemies Act.
Well, they would be entitled to the process that would be due in time of war. And certainly it could be argued that in a true time of war, that act from the 18th century would change how much process was due. Now, this fellow, Abrego Garcia, didn't get any process. He got sent there wrongly over an order from an immigration judge that he not be sent back there. And the reason for the order, I'm not making this up, is that he was an El Salvadorian who was being threatened by the El Salvadorian gang. And so he would be, and he had a right to asylum not to go to El Salvador, the immigration judge held in his favor, unless there was some further hearing where he was allowed to be sent there. So Trump and his administration did the exact opposite thing, not only from what the judge had ordered, but from common sense. They sent him to the place where he was most likely to actually be murdered by that gang that was threatening him. It wasn't that he was a member of the gang. If they could ever prove that he had anything to do with a gang, it seemed like he was an apostate. He was someone who'd actually left the gang, and now the gang was after him. So that was all completely crazy. But just to turn to that Alien Act from, I think it's 1799, it's absolutely clear that it's only to be used in time of war. It's only been used 3 times, which were in time of war. We are not in time of war. For any advisor to tell him that that was legal, or for any judge to rule that that was legal to use it in this situation when we're not in war against Abrego Garcia and the other people who were sent on those 3 flights, is legal malpractice. There is no basis. There's loads of things that are arguable in the law. That's not one of them. It only applies in wartime. And that's what that judge just said today. It only applies in wartime, so it can't be used. That's yet another reason why those 3 flights were illegal. Not only did a judge tell them to turn around and they were in contempt of the judge's order, not only did they send people down there who were ordered by judges not to be sent down there, but the whole basis of the act is bogus.
And so you end up with what we thought we'd end up with, which is a judge's order saying that this is not legitimate, and this policy that may indeed be repeated of scooping up people who you consider to be bad dudes. They're all dudes so far, although the researchers, and we've seen them scoop up that, I mean, she was an incredible scientific researcher, like one you'd be, desperate to get to your country. And she was scooped up and sent to Louisiana. Was in that prison for at least a month, maybe over a month. I think she's now just been returned, not to freedom, but to another holding place up in New England, which is kind of where she started. But anyway.
This is Miss Ozturk, the Turk who was grabbed on the street by masked men. It looked like something that would happen in a fascist country and not in America. That lady, Ozturk.
Right. There were 2 of them. There was her, and then there was the researcher, the scientific researcher who was stopped at immigration and at customs. When she was coming back into this country from Paris, she was bringing frog embryos that had been requested by the Harvard researcher, head of the department, who was working with her. She's a renowned scientific researcher, and she was arrested, sent to this place in Louisiana, and she's I think still fighting for her freedom. So you get these cases. But I guess what I was getting back to was, we thought we'd be here, David, where there'd be a court order saying no more of this. Now we have to see whether this administration respects that.
Well, they won't send any more flights. I mean, someone is really going to go to jail, administration or not, and they'll have to be pardoned by Trump afterwards. And it will be, you'll have to be a little bit when I said there is some level of spectacle that Trump will not want. At some point, he's going to cave on some of these things because, certainly with his base and even with a lot of moderates, the core of what he's doing on immigration is fairly popular. So he's losing the popularity, rightly or wrongly, in the opinion of many in your audience. But he's losing the popularity of, the border crossings are way, way down. I mean, Mark, you have to say, the Democrats seems like they could have done this, even without that legislation that they complained about at the end that Trump pulled back, that the Republicans were willing to do on a joint basis. That statute never did pass. And nothing has really changed from what the law was before. And it's just got to be admitted that Trump has managed to stop these border crossings to an amazing extent. And some of the deportations, if you would follow due process, are probably popular. Going to an after-hours club in Colorado that's open at 3:30 in the morning and catching the people that you catch at a club at 3:30. It's not like the stupid things that he does, like allow people to go to churches and allow them to go to schools where parents are picking up their kids. If he would stick to stuff like that, the truth is, I think a lot of it would be popular with a whole lot of the population, like it or not. But he does these things that are so impulsive and stupid and illegal. And of course, that allows his opponents, one of whom I am, to point to the fact that he's not following the law, which he's not following the law. So I don't think he's going to send any more flights back, any flights out. And then I think some of these particular people that we're talking about, I've always thought Abrego Garcia is going to come back here. He may come back here to a hearing that gives him due process and that then deports him. But that's, of course, exactly how our system works. I mean, most people who get prosecuted, Mark, are guilty. They get their Miranda warning, they get their due process rights. And at the end of the day, a great majority of them are guilty. We accept that in America, but we don't accept that because most of the people that the government wants to get are guilty, that we dispense with due process. That's what makes us different from other countries. And I just want to add one thing, Mark, to what you said about the immigrants. To the extent America is exceptional, we have these 2 oceans between us, 2 friendly neighbors, at least until Trump started in with Canada, 2 friendly neighbors, 2 huge oceans protecting us, and this amazing abundance of, our soil, our minerals, all that kind of thing. But you think what makes us exceptional beyond that? And part of it is the brain drain. Part of it is that all these brilliant people all over the world want to come here. Trump is dissipating that. It's just crazy. These researchers don't have to come here from India and China and everywhere in the world. They can go to France. France would be happy to have them. Canada would be happy to have them. But guess what? They come here. We have this huge advantage that students all over the world want to come here to study. Scientists want to come here to be scientists. These tech bros came here, right, to work on their huge industries that made us so rich, that made the Silicon Valley the wonder of the world, that made California the 4th largest economy in the entire world, all by itself. And you start to lose that. You lose the rule of law. You lose all these other things. These are the things that really do make us exceptional. And, all great empires, read your history, have frittered away their huge advantages. And I sure hope America doesn't do that. But we are definitely doing it under Trump. We're losing the things that really make us great.
Yeah, I see a lot about the empire, the death of an empire. And I get that that's clickbaity, and I've read Chris Hedges' book about I forget what it's called, America Empire and on the decline. Or I read a couple of these books, and the points made, I think, underpinning that general proposition are really powerful. But what you've suggested, I think, is fast tracking the end of the American empire. Again, I hate the word empire, but it might be very appropriate in the case of America, because we have these sorts of empirical instincts, military adventurism. We have military bases all over the world. We have a dominant economy that we've used both with soft power and with hard power, with, in hot exchanges. We just, he's continuing to do the bombing in Yemen and all of these other places, even as he's talked about by many of his supporters as the president for peace. He's a smack talker, and he seems anxious to use his military. So against all of that, I see the decline. But what you've said is something quite significant, which is that he's fast-tracked, and we talked a bit about this with the ambassador. I mean, decades of goodwill that followed World War II, and a kind of freedom and democracy and a democratic republic that was celebrated around the world, where at least it was an attempt at a purer system that represented the people's voice. That has all really been destroyed in 100 days.
Well, and if we don't have that standing in the world, who's going to replace us? Because it's not like, there have been excesses in America, and if we curb our excesses, that would be great. Okay, that's not what Trump wants to do. But where would the other consolidations of power come? They're obviously in the Far East. China wants to be worse than all of the things that are said about America. They want to not be for freedom. They want to exploit their neighbors. They want to make sure that they have a steady supply of raw materials. They don't respect liberty, freedom. These people who compare us to China, they're so far out of what's really going on. The Russian Empire, you see what the Russians want to do. And that's what I was saying on that show. You didn't play the part where I said about, we have to stand by, walk away from the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Are you kidding? We have to stand by Ukraine. Ukraine is a European power that's getting destroyed. This is the worst thing in Europe since Hitler. And we have to stand by the victims of this new Hitler, from the point of view not of extermination camps, but from the point of view of invading his neighbors and just thinking he can rape and pillage and destroy churches and destroy businesses and get away with it. That would be the worst lesson, Mark, for the world, if he could get away with it, because there's China just, salivating over Taiwan right across the straits and all these other countries. It would be a message to them. Yes, take what you want by force and you'll win in the end, because that's what Trump wants to do. He wants to give victory to Russia in the end for their bad behavior and carve up Ukraine. And that's what I think Democrats need to stand up, and we are against him doing that. And I think we can win an awful lot of Republicans, the Reagan Democrats, the Reagan people from the Cold War. I think they're all on our side on that. I don't know what Trump wants to do, get his Moscow Trump hotel, some kind of mineral deal that he thinks is going to enrich his family and some of his cronies. But none of it is worth allowing Russia to get away with any of this. And I know it's going to be very hard, Mark, to get Crimea back. And in fairness, Crimea was taken under Obama, and I guess Georgia was decimated under W. it's gone on for a while that we haven't stood up to Russia. And I'm not like McCain. I know you have to not stand there in Kiev like McCain did and act like Ukraine is going to join NATO the next day. Of course, that was provocative, but Russia started this war and they can't get away with carving up Ukraine.
Well, because you're talking about Ukraine and Russia, let me just follow this for a second, because I think that what's happened is significant. And that is, there is a deal, and it's the only deal that Ukrainians cleverly, I think, realized, and those in control, is it Zelensky or I think they realized you've got to give Trump and the Americans something, because they don't care about the stuff that David Katz just talked about clearly anymore. They don't care about the rise of authoritarianism. They don't care about Putin's aggression. They don't care about any of this anymore. They have a whole reconstituted vision of what's happening here. And unless you give the Americans now some kind of interest here in Ukraine, we are going to lose Ukraine to the Russians, because the Americans are going to serve Ukraine up to them. And so this rare earth minerals deal, that gives Trump particularly some skin in the game. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Well, I think that was very smart of Ukraine. I think the Europeans are escalating their production of weapons. One thing that's going to happen is that you say Trump says we're bailing them out, they're taking advantage of us. The weapons were almost all bought from American manufacturers. It was propping up the so-called military industrial complex. That's what's so interesting, is that Democrats who used to stand up against why are we spending so much money on the military now say spend more money on the military if it's going to help Ukraine survive and fend off Russia. So I think that was very smart of them to do that. And they need to survive right now. They need to not have like half their country basically handed over. And Crimea may have to go, but it's one thing to say. This is diplomacy. This is like anybody who knows their world history. You don't say, oh, you can have Crimea. Here's the deal. Russia has Crimea. No, you say, look, you're occupying the place. This is totally illegal. This will not stand. We will never allow this to happen. Mexico has never admitted that we won the Mexican-American War and that we're entitled to California, Arizona, and Texas. They go to the United Nations every year, which will now have Waltz over there. What a demotion. And they'll make their motion with Waltz sitting there probably on his chat thing that he shouldn't be on over at the United Nations, and say, we demand the return of California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas because it was wrongly taken from us. And the world should always say that Crimea was wrongly taken, and at every opportunity try to get Crimea back to Ukraine and try to stop Russia from this land grab over there. Not say, oh, Crimea stays with Russia. The things that Trump says, it's so unbelievable. And anyone who compares him to Reagan, like I said, I was around during Reagan. His stuff was very well written, very well researched, and he didn't say stupid things like that. And what's he known for? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. So if you're out there voting for Trump and you think what Trump is doing is okay, Mr. Putin, withdraw your troops.
Yeah, I think you're so right about this. He's kind of given away the store. A guy who considers himself this master negotiator. He's clearly not.
Well, we know what a farce that is.
Yeah, it was that
the
exactly.
Idiocy of the deal. The idiocy of every deal. This man bankrupted everything he touched, and I think your other guest said he's bankrupting America. He's spending like a drunken sailor. How do the Republicans buy into this?
Well, I think the information isn't out there. I just think they don't know. I just came back from Tennessee, and it's a red state, and you feel it. These wonderful people who I was enjoying dinner with and conversation with and music with and everything. You start talking politics with them, they have a different view of what's happening. And a lot of it is dependent on the information that they are drawing on, because they are just not tied into a lot of the information sources that we are. And they would say, well, that's because we are, looking at the mainstream media, which won't tell you this and won't tell you that. There is a kind of fealty to a vision of America, whether it's Trump or someone else, that these people have. So it was a remarkable thing to, because everybody in the room seems to share sort of the same values. And yet the fact that they could, again, see this guy as anything but a train wreck was astounding to me. And one of them said, it was typical mainstream media that they didn't post a thank you to Trump and Musk for rescuing those astronauts that were stranded in space. That was one of the people who I was speaking with. This is a smart guy. And I'm thinking, well, they weren't stranded in space. It was part of the thing. And it's not, you wanted the mainstream media to what? Run a crawl, thank you, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, for bringing them home. That's really what he said he wanted. So it's quite Mark, an extreme view of things.
Back in 1819, I was on Laura Ingram's show 4 times. And, she sort of liked having a fairly liberal guest or hearing the other side of the story. It was during the Kavanaugh hearings. And I think that she was really worried if the Republicans were doing the right thing, if they should stick with Kavanaugh or pull him back while they still had the majority in the Senate and get somebody else through before maybe they lost the Senate, which eventually they would lose. So I think she really wanted another opinion. She wanted, and so we were on the show 4 times during the Kavanaugh thing. And then after that was over, I guess she and her producer just really weren't interested. Yeah. And the show became like 100% Trumpy. And that's the problem. People are watching that. And, it's not just Fox anymore. It's all the podcasts. It's this enormous echo chamber that just relentlessly pushes out this story. I mean, much more than they think the big media, or what do they call it, the mainstream media does, which covers things much more fairly than that whole right-wing echo chamber, which is incessant.
Yeah. Indeed. I want to turn to a couple of legal things that are happening. These are really big things. We just kind of gotten off on Ukraine, but these are huge. The FBI, David Katz, former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, the FBI reassigning agents who knelt during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. Conservatives have pointed in large measure to a photo taken during President Trump's first term in the White House as proof that the FBI harbors a liberal agenda, and they want those agents who knelt during those Black Lives Matter protests, they want them out of the agency.
Well, I mean, I think it's really outrageous, and there are civil service protections. But I think that what Trump wants to do is sort of turn negative focus on them to make their lives miserable. A lot of what he does, depending what the law ultimately does, depending whether if these people get good lawyers, hang in there, whether the Civil Service Commission will give them back pay and allow, a rescission of whatever penalties they've suffered. That's not what Trump's thinking about. Trump's thinking right now, he likes that image of intimidating them, pushing them around. They're the FBI. And it's really terrible. I'm still a working lawyer. I defend federal criminal cases. I work with the FBI. And this, whatever he's talking about, it's totally non-existent with the FBI and with the assistant U.S. attorneys. They come to work. They want to do their job. They want to do justice. That doesn't mean that I don't disagree with them on cases or on some of their decisions. But this whole image that he's painted of them, Mark, is so far out. And, if everybody is, let's say it's Martin Luther King's birthday or something at an FBI office and it's being celebrated by the office, what are they supposed to do? I mean, part of it is just, what would you have done if you worked there and it was being celebrated? What would you have protested the other way? I mean, come on, it's not a big deal. It's like St. Patrick's Day. Everybody wears green. What does that mean? They have a political position about Ireland?
Thank you. Albert, I just sent you the picture that you can post. This is the picture from which Republicans said the FBI is compromised, and those people in this picture that Albert's going to show you in a moment, they were reassigned, and they're looking. There they are. They were kneeling during the Black Lives Matter protest. It was based on that picture that the new administration hunted them down and said, no, these agents who knelt during this 2020 BLM protest should be purged because the FBI harbors a liberal agenda, which is astounding to me since their FBI, I don't think, has ever harbored a liberal agenda based on everything I've read. I mean, from J. Edgar Hoover on.
First of all, the special agents at the FBI are not snowflakes. So if they're going to all land on their feet, they're going to all do great. If they get reassigned, they're going to go to other places. It's going to all be fine. There's actually a case in the courts right now, Mark, where the Department of Justice is trying to put together a list of like the 5,000 FBI agents and assistant U.S. attorneys who worked on the January 6th prosecutions. And you might say, well, what's the big deal about that list all being put in one place? It would be like Senator Joe McCarthy during the Red Scare. I have here in my hand a list of the 5,000 agents. But having it all on one list, and then there's the same idea of a purge or something like that. There's also the fear of it being released, and they're getting the names and maybe the home addresses of these FBI special agents. These guys have a badge and a gun. They're in great physical shape, and even they are worried about what I think you or Bill Maher or somebody has called the brown shirts, the 1,500 Trump convicted people from the January 6th marauding of the Capitol where 5 people died. They're worried. They're worried about having their names on a list. And it looks like the federal judge in that case has said is going to issue a restraining order, which bars exactly, it compels the FBI and the DOJ management to handle that list of the FBI special agents and assistant U.S. attorneys who worked on January 6th prosecutions. And, it's so crazy. I have one of them out here in L.A. that I disagree with on everything. He's a hard charger. He's so pro-government. He's so unreasonable, in my opinion. He worked on one of these January 6th cases. He was kind of proud of it. I mean, why wouldn't you be proud of it? It was the biggest investigation in the history of the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. What, you want to be the guy left off of it? If as much as I didn't like his comportment on our case, the idea that he would be in trouble because he was one of the hundreds of U.S. attorneys who worked in that case, he had to set his clock on Washington time because everything happened Washington schedule, and he didn't want to be out of step. So I remember that dealing with him, I always had to remember, hey, this guy's on DC time. Yeah, it's so stupid, Mark. It's so phenomenally stupid and unreasonable. It's just the revenge tour. It's just a vendetta for its own sake. And I guarantee you, as stupid as some of the people around Trump are, every one of them said to him, you just can't go down this road. You look so terrible. And of course, he's frittered away.
I don't know about that. I mean, I think Pam Bondi has pursued these kinds of jihadist efforts on the part of Trump, the vengeful pursuit of people who've gone against him, those who were involved in those investigations to which you've referred. I mean, I think she's been on board. She's kind of a signatory to it all.
I don't know anything inside, Mark, but she hits me as someone with her arm twisted behind her back. I think the only true zealot. I think Kash Patel's a true zealot. But again, I'm not a mind reader, so it's just pure opinion.
Of course. But thank you. Not to interrupt, and then but just that zealotry that you're talking about, when that meets the law, it's a scary time. So you've got somebody like Patel, who's in charge of the FBI and can pursue these investigations and even arrests, and you've got Bondi, arm twisted or not, who is the highest ranking officer of justice in the land.
One of these days we can go through the whole cabinet and high officials, and I'll tell you, opportunist, zealot, true believer, ass kisser.
Okay, I love that plan. So the legal challenges for Trump, it strikes me they're numerous, and he's losing a lot of these cases. How does this all game out? Because it's now really, he's going to have to play by even the marginal rules I was mentioning in the first half hour, and you know this, that even an accelerated kind of court case that's associated, or court, I wouldn't even call it a case. I mean, these the due process situations that these illegals find themselves in, they're going to move very, very quickly. I mean, this is not a long court case typically with these guys.
Well, I think that, the deportation hearings and whatnot, they'll be cranked up again. I think that he just so overstepped on this thing. And as I say, he's going down in popularity, and everything changes, when he's at like 38% on handling the economy. This guy ran on the economy. Now he's at 38% on the economy. It's all getting worse. Out here in LA, people, I have a client who's actually a customs broker. And so I've been following the port, as part of my practice. The port is a disaster out here. The shipping is down like a third into LA. The reverberations are going to be felt everywhere. All these truckers, everybody associated with having a really busy port. We're not going to have a busy port. And then in a couple of months, we're going to have the empty shelves. And all of it is going to make Trump look terrible. And on top of that, there are all these violations of the law. I know you laughed at me last time I said this, but at some point he's going to say, I don't need this. I don't need this shock and awe. Another outrage that I commented on the show, and I know, Mark, you didn't have time to play the whole thing, was this Wisconsin state judge being handcuffed. And I'm one of the people who, I'm right between the people who think it's outrageous that she ever got prosecuted, and the other side of it. I don't think it's outrageous that she's getting prosecuted, but I think it's absolutely unconscionable. Two things. Number one, that she got handcuffed and perp walked. That was obviously to intimidate other judges who have nothing to do with this. She's a state judge who supposedly was out of line in the same way a state judge was in Massachusetts during the first term. This is the exact, almost the exact replica of another case that happened with a judge in Massachusetts. So I'm not surprised that she's in trouble over this thing and suspended by the Wisconsin Supreme Court from appearing on the bench. But that she was handcuffed and perp walked is a total outrage. And that the case was publicized by Kash Patel. He would have been in an Office of Professional Responsibility misconduct investigation like that if they were real inspectors general and there was a real respect for law. He has no right at all to get out there and say, here's a picture of this judge that we handcuffed. There's very strict rules on what assistant U.S. attorneys can say about cases, what the attorney general can show, and to show a picture of her being perp walked. And of course, he had her arrested for no other reason than to show her being arrested and the perp walk itself. And that was an absolute outrage by Kash Patel.
Well, and what you were started with, and then I want to move on to quickly church and state separation, and then we got to wrap up. But what you point to is, or allude to, is interesting, because you're kind of alluding to the fact that maybe what this judge did might have been falling into the category of obstruction of justice.
It might be obstruction, which she was charged with, and it might be harboring a person you know to be illegally in the United States, which is the second charge. Right. And if I understand the facts, and of course, everyone's presumed innocent. A judge, somebody illegally in the United States, everybody's presumed innocent. But at least according to their affidavits sworn under penalty of perjury, there's 2 ICE agents in the courthouse. It's not against the law to be in a courthouse. She is apparently, at least according to them, very angry and almost sort of personally offended that they would be in her courthouse, near her courtroom, to execute this arrest. So she tells them, she apparently comes out off the bench. She goes out in the hallway where they're waiting. There's one door to come out of the courtroom. And as soon as this guy comes out of the courtroom, he's going to be arrested. And that's what ICE is there for. And she supposedly knows that. And she goes out in the hallway and she starts berating them and says, you guys have to go speak to the chief judge. If you're doing something like this, you have to go down the hall and speak to the chief judge. And no sooner do they go down the hall to speak with the chief judge, she goes back into her courtroom. She takes this person who, from what they're saying, is illegally in the United States and is about to be arrested by ICE, out the back door. There's a back door in a lot of these courtrooms that jurors go out and people in custody are taken out. And she lets them out through the back door. So she's harboring him for the period of time that she has control of him and is taking him out the back door. Sure. And then the whole thing is, of course, completely flubbed. And so the ICE agents manage to see this guy out on the street and they have a foot chase and they get him. I mean, and like I said, there was a case like that during the first Trump term. So you can certainly see why she's in trouble. One of the top lawyers in America, some guy who argues in the Supreme Court all the time, has come to her defense. She's rallying a defense. I get it. I get why they're demonstrating outside the Milwaukee courthouse. And I understand why people are outraged over this. But at the same time, you know, here's what Trump thinks. As it's all visual. It's all like a TV show. Trump says to himself, do I mind being up? It's not the principle for him. Do I mind being up against this person? Do I mind being up against that narrative that I just told you? And then a lot of defenders of her say, my God, we want to have people feel free to come to the courthouse, even if they're illegally in the United States. But guess what? This wasn't a juror. This certainly wasn't a witness. This was the perpetrator of domestic violence who they were arresting at the courthouse. So Trump says to himself, again, I got a domestic violence guy. I got this lady with her deportment toward these ICE agents. I got 2 of them who are willing to swear under oath that this is how the whole thing went down. We apprehended the guy running out of the back courthouse door. Trump says to himself, you know what? Game on.
Right, right. And so that's why in so many of these cases, the water can be muddied by the actual person and their history and their status. And so you get into that. But as you say, the treatment of the judge seems open and shut, and it really was beyond the pale.
Outrageous, awful. I hope.
And as you also say, it's designed to send a message. I mean, that's the reason for all this.
If there's anybody who's not a flight risk, but this is one of the things. There's so much. I've stood there with people who were as little a flight risk as her and seen them get detained by federal judges. So it's just. What can I say, Mark? I do the best I can to, and I would represent her in a minute.
Well, but the idea here is it's being played out across the board. It's the suing of CBS and ABC. It's the going after the universities. It's going after the law firms and shaking them down for money. This is all part of a kind. And the arrest, a high-profile arrest, is the theater of getting you to obey. And that's all in service of this. The universities, the media, the judicial system, it is all part of a type. And it's a unified strategy that, while maybe seeming sloppy, is very high profile, very aggressive, and very convincing. I mean, they've cowed an entire party. The GOP, we just had a guy on, he's kind of like classic GOP from Bush administration. He can't even recognize the place. Like, he's praying for the good old days when it was a different kind of fascism, economic fascism. All right.
Well, these folks have to vote for the Democrats. And if someone comes along like Clinton, they have to say to themselves, because the Republicans will vote for such a person. I just saw Governor Gretchen Whitmer speak at USC at the book fair the other day. I think she'd be a wonderful candidate. I see Shapiro. I think that he'd be a wonderful candidate. I'm always pushing without any encouragement. I'm going to get a phone call that says to me, stop. I'm always saying my old friend Adam Schiff would be a great candidate. And then the left has to recognize, and I'm going to be controversial right now, okay? AOC is not going to beat J.D. Vance. It's just, you got to make your peace with that. There's a lot of things that you may agree with her on. There's a lot of things that you can get in the agenda. Win first. But she's not the person to hand you back the White House.
Yeah, Sisi says Orban's takeover of Hungary, 3 key steps that MAGA is following. Take over the courts, take over the media, overhaul electoral laws. Exactly. I see it as a really...
Can I address her first point? Yeah. Trump has not taken over the courts. The courts have stood up to him. He's lost 95% of the time. Almost everything that he's done that's been impetuous, okay, and not thought through, the judges have stopped. Musk got away, I think, with copying a lot of those records, and I think the judges were not fast enough to see what he was doing. I think every judge should have issued a temporary restraining order the day a Musk case came before that judge. I think we're going to see the repercussions of how he's tapped into and copied those records, and you're never going to get that genie back in the bottle. But when you look at what Trump has done, Trump has been reversed by the courts over and over again. He hasn't taken over the courts. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that he has to facilitate the return of this Abrego Garcia. The courts are going to hold up on the birthright citizenship. They're going to say that's no good. Over and over again, the courts have stood up to him. So he has not taken over the courts.
Okay, well, let me push back on that a little bit, even though you know this stuff and I don't. I would say the birthright citizenship stuff doesn't speak to his power. He can. It's a give me. It's really more for his base. You even, I think, maybe noted it as such in one of our conversations. It's like, hey, I tried with the birthright citizenship, but they knocked it down. He is seeing from that Supreme Court something that you didn't predict, and no one did. Everybody kind of was on the side of, well, they're not going to go for presidential immunity, but they actually
did. No, Mark, I predicted that one. I said there was a case called Fitzgerald.
Oh, that's right, the Nixon thing. I'm so sorry. Yeah, you did. I apologize.
Which gave a president civil immunity. I said, watch out. They may extend that to criminal immunity. And
that's what they did.
MSNBC never reported that. They reported this like this was like something so far out of left field, blah, blah, blah. I did predict this.
I'm so sorry, David. I apologize. I
didn't agree with Fitzgerald, and I didn't agree with this happening. And I think they went way too far. This, Roberts did not get that case. So I think he's gotten it now that he's seen Trump. He's going
to have to find God, but it'll be a little late. But you're right. I misspoke.
I misspoke.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
I'm proud of my Katz.
You're absolutely.
Nobody's giving me crap about my
Katz
record on the Mark Thompson. You guys get the benefit of it.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
I would like to apologize.
I'm not like the CNBC guys.
All right. So here is the latest. Help me on this one. In one of the most significant cases of the term, the Supreme Court's conservative majority seems willing to do what? To allow the nation's first religious public charter school, permitting direct and complete taxpayer funding for a faith-based school for the first time. This is a school in rural Oklahoma that expects students to adhere to Catholic beliefs and religious mission and doctrine. But this ruling in favor of the school by the high court could trigger an explosion, as noted here, of religious schools funded entirely by U.S. tax dollars. It could also lead to some states putting new limits on charter schools to avoid funding religion. Speak to the Supreme Court's disposition to federal dollars going to religious education.
Well, I feel better about paying taxes right now, Mark, don't you, with the prospect of them going to religious schools on our dime? You know, the background to this is that these religions, no one's being hostile to religion. Religions have huge exemptions. You go all around this country, you find these beautiful pieces of property that would sell for billions of dollars, and there's a church there, or there's a synagogue there, or there is a mosque there, and they don't pay any tax whatsoever. And they're exempt from all kinds of regulations. And in exchange for that, though, they can't use federal money. You know, they're not paying in any federal money, and they want to take out all this federal money. And this case is a very tough one. One thing is that Amy Coney Barrett has recused herself. So there's a real possibility of a 4-4 split. The 3 moderate to liberal justices are all going to vote to affirm the Oklahoma court. So if Roberts goes with them, it goes 4-4, and Oklahoma's Supreme Court is affirmed, which means that this cannot be done. And wow, this is a really tough one to predict. It's either, I think Roberts is if Kavanaugh's questions made it clear that, you know, he wants to protect the Catholic schools. And this is so terrible for our country and for the perception of the courts, Mark. We want to have a lot of respect for the courts. We want the courts to be held in high esteem. If this is affirmed, it's going to be all Catholic justices. Okay, this is the dominance of the court by the Catholics. And if the Catholics deliver this, yes, it's going to help yeshivas, it's going to help madrasas get money from the taxpayers. But if this is done by all Catholic justices and it's perceived very much as helping the Catholic Church, the issue is that these charter schools, Mark, are public schools. There's no messing around with that. All the law has said that they're public schools, and a lot of people don't understand that about charter schools. They give choice, but within a parameter approved by the state, organized by the state, with a curriculum that's largely dictated by the state. They are very much not private schools, and that's why they're funded with tax dollars, because the same authorities that collect the taxes, you know, the government controls those schools. So now the question is, can you give that money, which is given to a charter school, to a religious school? And the answer has always been no, because that's the separation between church and state. These religions don't pay in and they don't get out. Now, there are certain things. Can you construct a driveway? Everybody needs a driveway. So maybe you can do a driveway with public funds at a religious school. And so there's all this law on how much the government can fund. But the idea they can fund the entire school because it's a charter school has always been beyond the pale. And, you know, this is not a liberal state. There was only one dissenting vote, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court said that, no, you cannot spend this kind of money. Sotomayor asked a really good question. She pointed out it's not just Catholic schools. You take some of these yeshivas, which are Jewish schools. I'm Jewish myself. But some of them are pretty extreme in their curriculum. That's fine as long as they're religious schools and they're not funded by the government. Many of those schools, almost all they do is read the Talmud, you know, and they don't even read it in English. There are people who graduate from those schools who don't even speak English. We're going to pay for that with our taxpayer funds. They could never be a normal charter school if they have a 90% religious orientation. Or you take the Catholic school, the St. Isidore of Seville Catholic school, the one that's actually suing right here. It's a Catholic catechism, which is all very, very fine. But the idea that we're going to pay public funds and a large part of the program is this Catholic catechism is just not right. It's not right under our Constitution and our separation of church and state. Now, Kavanaugh and some of the other Catholic justices who are aligned with him, who want to uphold this, they say, well, wait a second. The only thing wrong with that St. Isidore of Seville school is that it's Catholic. It has religion. But that's everything that's wrong with it. That's everything that's wrong with it. It's not because we're hostile to religion. It's because there's separation of church and state. So this is the biggest religion case of the term. And I think it's a fascinating one.
It's huge. I mean, it kicks the door open to, as you've just stated, I mean, a kind of
there are
funding.
Over 4 million. Let me say one last thing. There are over 4 million kids in charter schools. And a lot of the states may react and just get rid of charter schools. That's what a lot of people may do. They say, whoa, wait a second. The charter school, maybe it emphasized science and math more than the regular schools. Maybe it had slightly different disciplinary rules that made some parents happy to go to this charter school. But the idea that you're going to be funding madrasas and yeshivas and Catholic schools because the Supreme Court of the United States says you have to, if you're going to spend public money on charter schools, so many people will say, well, that's it, no more charter schools. And that affects millions of people and their parents. And we should leave things just exactly where they are and not mess around with 4 million students in charter schools.
And you point out so beautifully the irony of tax exemption and now wanting tax dollars for support. The idea, and I've just been against it since, I was old enough to speak. It just seems so absurd that you just mention God and divinity and you get tax exemption. And you can build huge real estate empires, as the Church of Scientology has done, and as the Catholic Church has done, et cetera, while paying no taxes on any of this stuff. So just more to this, just as we finish up, Alito asking if charter schools could set up LGBTQ plus friendly curriculum. Justice Alito asking Oklahoma attorney Gregory Garay if charter schools could be more flexible in their curriculum and give families more alternatives to choose from in public education. Garay said that all public schools, including charters, have to conform to the state's curriculum requirements. That's what David Katz has just said. Alito invoked several hypotheticals of what he called, quote, progressive schools setting their own curriculum, including being an LGBTQ plus friendly school. Those are his words, with books that present same-sex couples as, quote, a perfectly legitimate lifestyle, or teaching history from the standpoint of the 1619 Project, which sought to reframe how the United States talks about slavery. The lawyer for this Oklahoma school that's trying to get this funding said no, because those schools would still need to meet the state's academic standards and could not focus their curriculum on those subjects. So, as you've just said, David, this school, this St. Isidore, would also have to meet those standards, the standards established by the state.
Well, LGBTQ is not a religion. And there are all of these privileges that religions have. But, we have two clauses. One is that we don't establish a religion, but one is that we keep religion and state separate. And this is, our founding fathers and mothers, right? The people who came over, this is what they came over here for, was religious liberty and to not have the state tell you what to do. That's one thing. That's all very nice. And I guess Alito's saying, well, they kind of tell our kids what to do because they have this LGBTQ friendly agenda, but that's not a religion. And the Catholic dogma, Catholic catechism, is a religion. That's why they get all these tax breaks and everything else, but that's also why they don't get funded by the taxpayers. I mean, to me, Alito is not, he's ignoring, and if the right-wing Catholic justices on there, as I say, all it takes really is Roberts. If Roberts goes, I think Kavanaugh, Gorsuch from their questioning, Alito, Thomas, it's clear that those 4 Catholic justices are going to affirm. So if they get Roberts, who's also Catholic, to go with them, and they decide this thing 5-3, it's just a terrible day for the separation of church and state. And, I remember when JFK was running for president, I'm old enough to remember that. And everybody said, oh, he won't be a president for the American people. He'll do what the Pope wants. And boy, this is sure going to have the look of doing what the Pope wants, because they're going to subsidize all these Catholic schools that our entire lifetime, Mark, have not been paid for by the taxpayers. This is radical. This is almost like Dobbs. This is changing law that's existed, your whole life. I'm older than you, so most of my life. But we have not paid for Catholic schools. We haven't paid. I have a friend, he's all upset about that. My God, I pay all these taxes for the public schools and my kid doesn't even go there. I got to pay for the yeshiva. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's the way
right.
it's been here
No,
for a
of
long
course.
time. That's the way it is.
Those arguments have never held well. I got to pay all this money. It goes to the library. I never use the library. Yeah, that's not the point.
Well, now we taxpayers are going to pay. And, the rubber's going to hit the road for some people when they're starting to pay for these madrasas. You just shouldn't pay for anybody's religious education. They have a right to their religious education. They don't have to go to the public schools. You can send your kid to those Jewish people who send their kids to those schools where they study the Talmud and they barely learn English at school. We're not taking away their right because we're not establishing a religion. We're not infringing on their religious liberty. And likewise with the Catholics, no matter how much, you may be a Bill Maher type, atheist, right? And yet, you don't have to pay for the Catholic schools. At the same time, loads of people can send their kids to Catholic school and they can have a dogma that's anathema to you. And that's always been the way that this country has gone down. And they may change that. I'm just hoping that Roberts takes a deep breath on this one and makes it 4-4. And then they can, I think the reason that Amy Coney Barrett is not in it is I think that she may have had something to do with the group that's litigating this case. So she did the right thing.
I see.
She did the right thing by standing down out of it. And I suppose some Supreme Court can look at it again in the future, but I sure hope they don't, because I think that the thing is set up now, Mark, just in a way that serves everybody's interests. And that all the taxpayers, I think, are really going to rebel against the charter schools if having a charter school means that you have to pay for religious schools, and you don't want to pay for that.
Right. And I think you're right to bring in all these other religions, because everybody goes, my religion, my Lord and Savior is the right one. The rest of these, you don't deserve any money.
Those are all the countries the immigrants left. That was exactly how they did it. That was the
Sure.
Church of England. What do you think drove people here for their religious liberty? To not have the Church of England do exactly what this Catholic majority of the U.S. Supreme Court might do now.
But what's masquerading as religious liberty is actually a kind of imposition of religion. And you, as you say, don't have a state religion, but the minute you have supporting monies coming from state coffers, I mean state federal, when I say state, the state of the United States of America, all of a sudden you are supporting certain religions over others, but you get into what is a de facto support of a religion. And the last thing I just want to mention is that this president, and many would call him godless and knowing nothing about religion.
There is that, Mark.
I might call him that. But and by the way, being godless, by the way, is fine. I've got no problem with people who are godless at all. I embrace them. It's terrific. But the hypocrisy of being godless and also doing this, the executive order establishing a presidential commission on religious liberty and openly questioning the separation of church and state. I mean, he is escalating this controversy that you've talked about and getting us closer to state-sponsored religion. And he said this, they say there's separation. I don't know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. But whether there's separation or not, you guys are in the White House where you should be, and you're representing our country, and we're bringing religion back to our country, and it's a big deal. Those are Trump's remarks.
You can send your kid to Hebrew school after classes. You can send them to Catholic school. You can observe your religion in so many ways. The Supreme Court has carved out all those things that you don't have to abide by if it's against your religious scruples. A lot of people think they've gone way too far on some of those things. Medical centers that don't have to treat people because supposedly it's against their religious scruples. And you think, really? I mean, you couldn't find doctors to do that procedure. It was but they've allowed them all kinds of exemptions from all kinds of laws this U.S. Supreme Court has. They've bent over backwards, I think, too far in their precedents. But if they actually do this, I don't know. It's a really, really hard one to predict. And like I said, it's really going to come down to Roberts. If he votes with the three, it's pretty clear how the other three are going to vote. That is, Sotomayor, Kagan, and what's the one that they just put on there, Mark?
You're talking about Barrett or the last?
Yeah,
the last justice appointed was Barrett, right?
No, the one that Biden.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jackson?
There you go.
Yeah.
The three of them, it's clear how the three of them are going to vote. And so since 4-4, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court, get a load of this, they got this right with only one dissenting vote, because it's very clear, Mark, under the precedents that that's how this case ought to come out. And it may be that Roberts, he'll get a lot of flack from the right wing and the religious lobbies and all that. But the Catholic Church, I don't think he'll be invited to Rome the way Alito was. But I think that Roberts may say, you know what, this really is changing. This is like another Dobbs. This is another one that's really against precedent in this field. And the taxpayers, they don't get anything from these religions. They shouldn't have to pay for schools. And charters are public schools. They're under public force in a way that these schools will not be, because they'll still be teaching their catechisms and their dogmas and all this kind of stuff. And so charter schools are one thing if they're not religious. And it's not because we don't like religion or we're hostile to religion. It's because there's another principle that kicks in, the separation of church and state, that precludes the taxpayers from having to pay for religious schools, even if they're so-called charter schools. Charter schools means public and not religious, the way the Catholic Church and the yeshivas are.
I am told by Kim. Kim, did you have something you wanted to inform us of?
Hiya, Kim.
Kim, welcome. You can jump on. Does Kim not?
Hi, I'm here. All I said was it's 1:20 now, 1:22. I was just noting the time, like a human alarm clock.
Yeah.
Hi, David Katz.
All right.
I blame you.
All right.
You have an opinion on this?
Kim, how are you?
Kim is saying we don't have time for any more opinions.
Okay.
She's saying, look,
your opinion?
we're on the Pacific time. She's looking at Pacific time. It's 1:20, which is well past our expiration date.
Kim, this is starting to sound like a Trump cabinet meeting.
That's right. That's right.
You agree with everything I said or thought in my life.
I mean, who goes against Katzadamus? Come on.
It is true. David Katz, we adore you. Thank you, Kim, for reminding us that we do have to keep a schedule of some kind. We'll look for you on apparently News Nation, Fox News Channel, and across the English-speaking world, and of course next Thursday. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Great to be with you. Good to be back with you. You doing okay? How's your hand?
It's recovering. I still have some movement issues, but it's recovering. So thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Neither Kim nor Albert asked about my hand or my condition. They don't. They were all business. Yeah.
That's the trial lawyer in me, Mark. That's the trial lawyer in me. I'm such a person.
All right, David. Be well, my friend. David Katz, everybody. Yes, I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
You cannot say you love your country.
Sayonara, sucker!
I love it when you're angry.
I did run long, and I blame
you.
All right, maybe my fault in part, but it did run long. So just time for like 10 minutes of Kim's news.
No, we don't have time for that.
You don't? Oh, you don't? Oh, you don't?
And I have some good stories lined up
Girl,
too.
you just woo.
Oh my God!
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
I don't know what goes on, Albert. I really don't know.
We can't do the news is because we have people to thank in the spring ka-ching.
The spring ka-ching is our big fundraiser for spring, the end of spring. We need to buoy our sadly emptying coffers, and Ed Weird K with a $10 super sticker. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Here's some money toward Muggate. We all love the Mark Thompson Show people. Ren, love your 20. Thank you, my darling. Appreciate that. Inlays with a $2 super chat that says, wrong, except Republicans like me that cross the aisle. Oh. Is that what he's saying? It's saying, yeah, very, very cool. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
Thank you, Inlays. Trevor Maxon, what up, Trevor, with a $20 super sticker. Big shout out.
Big shout out.
It's our spring ka-ching. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Wow. Jim Slayton with a $20 super sticker. Wow. Jim is OG of this show. He is someone who's been here since the very beginning. Mayday spring ka-ching from Jane O with a 20. Come on, Jane.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, really cool, everybody. We sadly really do need to kind of do a push here for money, so really appreciate all the support. And by the way, we're frugal and sensible about our money spend, but it's because the ad revenues on YouTube have just ended because of a lot of things. Some of it has to do with politics. So we're really so grateful. Depressed Canadian with a $10 super chat. All FBI directors have been conservative Republicans, talking about the FBI and looking to, root out the seeds of liberalism that have informed the agency all these years. And of course, that's absurd. The FBI has leaned conservative, if you will, Republican, GOP. And those leaders who've run the FBI have leaned that way. I mean, I can't think of one that's like, that's a super lib. Maybe you can disabuse me of that. Give Michael the damn mug already, Mark. Cheers to you, Sandy and Gary D. Thank you for the $10.
Big shout out.
Shout out. We will get him a mug. And Luis, who is an OG and just perhaps was informed of his statue, which is going up on Thompson Terrace in the metaverse. And those of you who have honored us on an ongoing basis with contributions, support, participation, all of you at some point reach a threshold at which you are considered for a statue on Thompson Terrace. There are only a few of them. I think they're, at last check, I want to say there are about 10. But Luis will have one of them. Yay, he says, a statue on Thompson Terrace. What an incredible honor. Thank you. I hope Green Day, Metallica, and U2 are available to play the unveiling. Yes, that would be nice. The plan is to delete security for health and cyber and economy and military to invite catastrophe, declare martial law, and cancel elections. That's from Cousin Erie.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, happy 4th of July. All right. By the way, I don't disagree so much with the engineering of a plan to undermine the elections. This whole idea that we're going to kind of, don't worry about, oh my God, he's going to get crushed in the midterms and we're going to take back over. Well, let's see how things proceed. There is a plan for dismantling government from this crowd, and there is a plan for dismantling the electoral process from this crowd. So make no mistake. Angela Silva, welcome back, Mark. You were missed, but it's nice to know the crew did an amazing job. They did. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you
Thank you so much, Angela, for the $10, and they were quite remarkable. Depressed Canadian with a $20 super chat. Wow, Depressed Canadian rapidly rising in my esteem with the financial support of the show and some great takes. Hey, Mark, discussing Trump with moderate Republicans is tough as GOP administrations get more extreme over time. The judge who ruled against Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act as unlawful was appointed in Trump's first term. That's right. He was a Trump judge. So we'll see how extreme they go with these judges. Generally they get that list of judges from the Federalist Society. That's, Leonard Leo and that crowd. And their jurisprudence is informed by a conservatism that the Federalist Society really wants. Harry Magnan says, a little ka-ching from Phoenix. I so miss San Francisco. He's in Phoenix, Yay. Harry. I see. Harry, big shout out to you. You're a big supporter of the show. We so appreciate it. For the National Day of Reason today, Peter Newton throws in a $5 super chat. Also, worthy wage, rotate your beer mantra. Rotate your beer, mantra, lay, and Mother Goose Day. So phone in sick and ride a bike. You are you familiar with some of that, Kim?
Yeah, it's Lay Day. May Day is Lay Day in Hawaii. Mother Goose Day. You've got Mantra Day. You've got Rotate Your Beer Day. Apparently, I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
Worthy Wage Day. I mean, it's a big day. May 1st.
Apparently, it is. Wow. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for Peter knowing that. Love Spring Ka-ching. Let's do this. Welcome back, Mark. Joan Hollywood. Thank you for the 20.
Big shout out.
So appreciative of all of you who have helped to fund the show and support the show. I wish I didn't have to ask you for support, but alas, I do. It's the only way to keep us around, and we hope to be around for a long time. Thanks also, many of you who threw in on comments. I tried to get to as many as we could. Rex Smith says the ambassador was delusional. Respect to Mark for being able to interview him. The man couldn't admit that Trump ran on being a fascist and tried to claim that he was worried about Kamala being a socialist. That was weird when you saw these sort of fascistic tendencies on the part of candidate Trump. And I guess you're seeing socialist, I mean, Kamala Harris, I thought was so middle of the road. She didn't really have a a policy position that was radioactive in any way. Again, Trump ran on the border, and I'm going to make the economy better in the first hour you elect me. In fact, I don't even have to be in power. The minute I'm elected, already the economy will be improving. And now, of course, we know. The guy, you know, clueless when it comes to the economy. Shadow, if you would, please.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim has the after party live next. We
Out of time. Bye-bye.
hit you with a big Friday show tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Until then, bye-bye.